Yo legends! Welcome to Fanfiction Legend. Grab your headphones, because today's story is about to hit different. Disclaimer. I do not claim ownership of this story. All rights belong to the original creators. One Piece, my second uncle is Kizaru. Page 41. For Nami, who possesses top-notch sailing talent, the possibility of encountering a shipwreck in the calm waters of the East China Sea is close to zero. So, is she planning to steal something from the Tiga? A scene suddenly flashed through Kyle's mind. He remembered. No wonder I had a strange sense of déjà vu just now. It seems that Nami used such means in the anime and successfully deceived the three idiots of the buggy pirates. I was originally planning to look for you, but I didn't expect you to come to my door on your own initiative. Kyle was delighted. He already had a plan against the Arlong pirates and Colonel Mouse. And now that they have arrived at the Kokoasi village, he certainly will not let go of Nami, a top navigator with such a beautiful figure. At this moment, the bad luck in Kyle's heart caused by the previous lottery disappeared. Maybe this is the law of conservation of luck. He walked directly towards Kobe, and with a thought in mind, he chuckled deliberately. Oh, she's actually a pretty girl? Kirby, see if she can be saved. If they can be saved, they will be put in cages and sold to slave traders. If she's dead, then see if her kidneys are still usable, and cut them off quickly and keep them safe. What? Kobe, who was about to rescue someone, was suddenly stunned and looked at Kyle in surprise. How come he didn't remember that his captain was such a ruthless character? However, little Tiga seemed to have a telepathic connection with Kyle and understood Kyle's thoughts instantly. The little boy's voice suddenly became low and gloomy. Captain Kyle, this guy seems to be dead. He must have died not long ago. In my opinion, we should cut off the kidneys as soon as possible. We should be able to sell them for a good price. Jia. Nami pretending to be unconscious? What the hell? What kind of ship am I on? Nami was horrified. She coughed twice quickly and prepared to wake up. No more. If you lie down again, who knows what will happen? Cough cough. Where am I? His dazed eyes slowly opened, and what he saw was a pink-haired boy holding a long sword. What? Nami screamed in fear, and when she recalled the conversation she had just heard, she immediately looked shocked. He quickly sat up, supported himself on the ground with his hands, exerted force on his hips, and moved backwards step by step. Brother! Brother! Stop it! I'm alive! Nami yelled in panic. But soon, she felt something was wrong. Nami originally thought that the person who rescued her would be some vicious pirate. After all, she saw the pirate ship from a distance. Coupled with the conversation just now, it made her heart palpitate even more. However, what appeared in front of her was a young man with a smirk and a child with his face covered by a hood. Even the knife-wielding boy who had scared her now had a dull look on his face, and he didn't look threatening at all. You? Nami was stunned at first, but then she immediately realized that she might have been tricked. But when she focused her eyes on Kyle, her pupils suddenly shrank. And many more. Isn't this guy the famous pirate Kyle who was making a lot of noise a while ago? Could it be possible that he had actually managed to get on the ship of the Dusk Pirates? In an instant, the fear in Nami's heart disappeared instantly. Instead, two golden lights suddenly burst out from her eyes. Gold means money. You know, in the current black market, the exact location of the Dusk Pirates alone has been sold for 500 million Baileys. This is still out of stock. If I could infiltrate this pirate group, and then secretly sell the location of the Dusk Pirates to the black market. Isn't that making a fortune? Things like cutting kidneys and selling slaves, it's obvious that they are just scare people. Nami, who has been on the sea for so many years, can tell at a glance what kind of person is sitting opposite her. Her mind worked quickly, and Nami soon put on the appearance of a weak and pitiful woman. Thank you very much for your rescue. I accidentally encountered a whirlpool at sea and almost lost my life. Excuse me, can you give me some water? No one can say no to a lovely girl. This is the experience Nami has accumulated over the years. However, in response to her request, Kyle just grinned. Water? We do have plenty. As soon as he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and produced a sheathed long sword out of thin air, and slashed it straight towards Nami's left arm. Before Nami could react, the already slippery sleeve was lifted up. All of a sudden, a shark pattern tattooed on fair skin appeared in front of everyone. Nami's face suddenly darkened. Broken. She subconsciously pulled down her sleeves to cover the pattern she didn't want to see. But Kyle seemed not to notice the girl's embarrassment at all, and asked directly. The symbol of the Arlong Pirates? Are you from the Arlong Pirates? I'm not. Nami was like a frightened little rabbit. She denied it flatly and shrank her body, as if this would make her feel safer. Don't be nervous. Kyle's tone suddenly became gentle. Even if you are a member of the Arlong Pirates, we won't do anything to you. As he spoke, he conjured up a green robe out of thin air and placed it directly over Nami's transparent sailor suit. We have seen enough welfare. Now, he decided to be a human being. Kyle pondered and said, From what I know, the Dragon Pirates are a pirate group composed of fishmen. They are extremely xenophobic and even hate humans. The fact that you were recruited by the evil dragon shows that you must have some extraordinary talent. Kyle placed his hands on the railing of the boat, grinned, and looked at Nami sincerely. So, would you like to switch jobs and join my pirate group? Chapter 37, Pull the Ship Over. What? Nami was suddenly stunned, her mouth slightly open to form an O, and she was a little confused by Kyle's sudden invitation. After only a few minutes on the ship, she felt as if her heart was on a roller coaster, going up and down, slow and fast, very exciting. Seeing Nami's expression at this moment, Kyle would certainly not let the little thief in front of him go. He directly took advantage of the victory and continued to hit the barrier in Nami's heart. He suddenly took a step forward, and stared at Nami with his eyes as deep as stars, as if he could see through her whole body. I think, with the personalities of the fishmen and the Dragon Pirates, your time in the Dragon Pirates must have been very difficult, right? Let me guess. From the fact that you denied your identity as a pirate without hesitation just now, you must be very reluctant about who you are now. But you have to work for the Arlong Pirates. It seems that the Arlongs must have caught some kind of handle or weakness in you. For example, your relatives. Am I right? Kyle pressed on, getting closer and closer to Nami. For a moment, their eyes met. What are you talking about? Nami's pupils dodged and her body subconsciously began to retreat. But at this moment, pang! An arm suddenly stretched out and pinned Nami against the railing of the ship. Kyle strikes again. I can understand you. You have been controlled by the evil dragon for a long time, so in your heart, the evil dragon has become a high wall that cannot be climbed over. But in fact, the rock that is unreachable to you may just be a small mound of earth to us. Don't keep everything in your heart, it will only make you lose the opportunity to change your life. As long as you join us, I can guarantee you that the Dragon Pirates will be completely destroyed within a month. You can consider this as a deal. Use your value to exchange for the life and death of the Arlong Pirates. Kyle extended his hand, smiled gently, and invited Nami again. Page 42. How about it? Do you want to try and trust us for once? After all, I am the strongest pirate in the East Sea. Nami suddenly fell silent, but her eyes were always focused on the hand that Kyle stretched out. Do not know why. At this moment, looking at Kyle's confident smile, she was surprised to find that her long-forgotten heart was actually beating fast. She was certainly not obsessed with Kyle's handsome face. Years of experience have long made her say goodbye to the stage of being a fangirl. She no longer believed in anyone or anything except money. But today, she was moved by a man she had only met for less than 10 minutes. His words seemed to have magic power, flowing through Nami's body. If anyone else had said this to her, Nami probably wouldn't have been touched. But unfortunately, Kyle is the only pirate in the East China Sea in the past few years who has been offered a bounty of 3,000 million Baileys. The bounty for the evil dragon is only 2,000 million Baileys. Flowery words may be lies. But the bounty of real money does exist there. Maybe I could try. Nami was still struggling. After all, she had no idea why Kyle said those things to her. But from Kyle's eyes, she knew that Kyle was not joking. He was inviting me sincerely, and he also sincerely wanted to help me. For some unknown reason, her hands suddenly reached out to Kyle. As soon as the two palms, one big and one small, came together, they were tightly clasped together. As if she had mustered up all her courage, Nami said forcefully, "My name is Nami, and I'm a navigator. If you can defeat the dragon, I am willing to swear allegiance to you." Kyle grinned, then, deal established. "I'm Kyle, captain of the Dusk Pirates. Besides, welcome to join us, Nami. Genius navigator, get." After excitedly releasing Nami's delicate hand, Kyle immediately turned his gaze to Kobe, who was confused beside him, and said softly, "Kobe, go inform Dashigi and Monka, let them rest for a while, we have a new partner." "What?" The stunned Kobe suddenly shouted, and then he realized that Kyle was talking to him. He immediately became serious and straightened his back. "Okay, Captain." After responding, he immediately trotted into the cabin. After an hour, on board the Tiga, the members of the Dusk Pirates and the new member Nami formed a circle and sat on the deck as if they were camping. Since there was no cook, they had to eat some ordinary meals made by KB. Fortunately, although this kid's cooking skills cannot be called delicious, it is definitely edible and equivalent to a home-cooked meal. After Nami agreed to join, Kyle did not hide the secret from her for long and chose to tell her his identity as a naval spy. With his super intuition, he was certain that Nami had joined Twilight sincerely, hoping that she could defeat the dragon. So Kyle wasn't worried at all that she would betray him. Have to say, although super intuition is only an A-level skill, after being digitized, it is simply a bug-level mind-peeping. Kyle told Nami that the Navy had actually long been suspicious of Colonel Mouse of the 16th branch of the East China Sea, believing that he was doing some shady business with the pirates. But the Navy headquarters has not found conclusive evidence. Nami's arrival can help Kyle complete the last piece of the puzzle. With her as a witness, they can now apply to the headquarters for a secret execution of Colonel Mouse. And by the way, complete the anti-bandit operation against the Arlong pirates. Above. Of course, Kyle made all of this up. Anyway, he is the only one who can contact the higher-ups, and the higher-ups can only contact him. He told the crew that it was an order from the Navy headquarters, and told Marshal Sengoku that it was the people beating drums to protest their injustice. He had already practiced telling lies of this kind that would not be exposed, and he could tell them fluently. As long as the execution of Colonel Mouse is true, the suppression of the Dragon Pirates is also true. He can then accept the supplies of the 16th branch and the stolen money of the Arlong pirates with tears in his eyes. This time, it was Nami who was shocked by Kyle's identity. She never imagined that the most mysterious and powerful pirate in the East China Sea would actually be an undercover agent of the Navy. Kikoyashi village is finally saved. After a conversation that men would never understand, Dashigi and Nami quickly became close sisters. After learning about Nami's experience, Dashigi burst into tears and apologized to Nami repeatedly. "I'm sorry, Nami. I didn't expect that something like this would happen in the East China Sea. This is the Navy's negligence. Dashigi sobbed and broke down. Nami, the victim, turned into a caring elder sister at this time, comforting Dashigi helplessly. Kyle was amazed at the strange scene. This Dashigi is already level 38, but she's still crying like a little girl. That's really... Above the sea, a white wave rushed forward like a sharp sword. Under Nami's guidance, the Tiga quickly changed its sailing direction and headed towards the area where the Dragon Empire was located. The sailing style and speed of the Tiga once again stunned Nami. But at the same time, this also gave her more confidence in the strength of Kyle and the others. According to Nami's estimation, They would reach the Dragon Empire in less than a week. Her heart was filled with excitement when she thought that the dark clouds hanging over the village of Kokakushi would be defeated in 7 days. However, not long after the simple welcome party ended. Dashigi and Monka were preparing to enter the basement to continue leveling up. Little Tiga was taking Nami to familiarize herself with the Tiga, and Kyle was continuing to draw the lottery. A huge naval fleet suddenly appeared in the sea not far from the Tiga. A total of 50 warships, riding the wind and waves, rushed towards the location of the Tiga. On a giant warship at the head, Click was holding a telescope, looking at the Tiga which was also sailing on the sea. The corners of his mouth suddenly rose, revealing a crazy smile. Wahahaha, 500W Bailey's black market intelligence turned out to be correct. That's the flag of the Dusk Pirates. Guys! Go full speed ahead. Pull the boat over there. Chapter 38, The Crick Pirates Invade. Click laughed wildly. After such a long time, he finally caught the tail of the Dusk Pirates. What the hell is the strongest pirate in the East China Sea? Have you asked him the opinion of the East China Sea Overlord? Looking at the pirate ship getting closer and closer, Creek's eyes were filled with madness and bloodshot. Notify all ships to aim their guns at the pirate ship ahead. So what if the bounty is high? If you don't know what's happening, I'll have you buried in the sea right now. This sea is mine, Crick's world. Crick let out a violent, maniacal laugh. As an extremely narcissistic, arrogant, and inexperienced pirate. In Click's eyes, 50 ships are the most powerful force in the world today. Looking across the entire East China Sea, there is no pirate group that can reach his scale. So he was filled with jealous anger towards Kyle, a pirate who suddenly appeared and had a higher bounty than him. In fact, if Kyle really only had a bounty of 3,000 million, it would be no match for Click's 50 warships. But today, Click was destined to pick the wrong opponent. Captain Kyle, something seems to be wrong. Kyle had just returned to the captain's cabin and wasn't even settled in yet. Little Tiga suddenly appeared in front of Kyle and reported. "Ha? What's wrong?" Kyle, who was about to continue drawing the lottery in the festivity of having a new partner, looked up curiously. Under his gaze, Little Tiga quickly stretched out his hands, and the power of the storm suddenly condensed to form a three-dimensional plane model, which was displayed in front of Kyle. As a ship elf who combines the professions of helmsman, lookout, and messenger, he is becoming more and more professional every day. Page 43. With the help of the three-dimensional model, Little Tiga continued. "That's right, Captain Kyle. Just now, dozens of ships suddenly appeared to our northwest and were approaching us in a semicircle. If the Tiga continues to sail in its current direction, we will soon be surrounded by this fleet. How are we going to deal with this?" Little Tiga spread his hands and asked, concentrating on the model in front of him. Through the model made by Little Tiga, Kyle quickly understood the situation outside. He frowned immediately and let out an inaudible groan. Dozens of ships? Could it be that Smoker has simply given up and contacted other naval bases to begin chasing and intercepting the Tiga? This idea suddenly popped up in Kyle's mind, but he quickly rejected it. It shouldn't be. Smoker isn't that stupid. He knew that the speed of the Tiga far exceeded that of ordinary ships. If we want to encircle something, it should be a full encirclement, not a half encirclement. Unless there are ambushes from all directions, they can escape immediately by just changing direction. With a flash of thought, Kyle asked Little Tiga. "Can you see what they look like? Are they naval ships?" "Probably not." Little Tiga shook his head. Having played with naval warships for so many days, he could be very sure of this. Strangeness. After muttering to himself, Kyle had to put aside his gashapon time again and stood up and walked towards the deck. To be on the safe side, he asked Little Tiga to call back to Dashigi and Monka. It is impossible to train. Kyle had little confidence in facing 50 warships alone. However, there is Dashigi with a combat power of nearly 3, and Monka with a combat power of 1.8 W. At least it can ensure the safety of the Tiga to the greatest extent. Although there has been no actual battle, Kyle guessed that Dashigi should be able to compete with pirates with bounties in the hundreds of millions at this time. Relying on the comprehensiveness of the Ghost Way, maybe he could even fight a suppressive battle. As for Monka, although his level is very close to that of Dashigi, the difference in experience is only 8,000 and the difference in level is only 2 levels. However, because it is a C-level character panel and is not equipped with weapons, its combat effectiveness is still far behind. Probably, he should be as strong as a pirate with a bounty of 6 or 7,000 million. With these two great gods protecting us. The East China Sea is so big, there is no place Kyle can't go. With the help of Little Tiga's teleportation, all members of the Dusk Pirates quickly gathered on the deck again. What happened? Nami, who had just joined the pirate group, looked around blankly. At this time, from the distant sea, one could clearly see densely packed warships, which were blocking the way of the Tiga with great momentum. A huge warship began to move out of the fleet and approached the Tiga. That's the ship of the Click Pirates. Seeing the flag flying on the opposite side, Dashigi immediately stretched out 2 fingers, pushed up her glasses, and stood next to Kyle. Without Kyle saying anything, a mighty spiritual pressure was released, forming a protective barrier above the Tiga. After doing all this, Dashigi asked Kyle. It's not a good thing. Do you need me to take care of them, Captain Kyle? The sharp Zanpakutō was unsheathed in an instant, and surging spiritual power wrapped around Dashigi's body. It seemed that as long as Kyle gave the order, she would immediately launch an attack on the warships in the distance. Not urgent. Kyle grinned, looked at the approaching warship and said, "See what the other party wants to do first." After Dashigi's reminder, he had remembered the identity of the other party. The Click Pirates, the Admiral of the East China Sea, the Overlord of the East China Sea with 5,000 pirates under his command. Judging from the size of the fleet today, it is very likely that the enemy is coming out in full force. When Kyle saw the Click Pirates, a figure immediately appeared in his mind. He was a man who was obviously not in the martial arts world, but whose story was spread everywhere in the martial arts world, an unrivaled strongman. Rumor has it that the man has a variety of identities. He can be one of the 7 warlords of the sea who has never appeared, or the vice-captain of the 4 emperors pirate group. Even the future admiral of the navy, the D-clan, the king of ancient weapons, or him who sits on the throne, all have the shadow of his existence. This person is the most mysterious man in the pirate world, Ajin. Of course, putting aside those messy and bad jokes, Ajin is also a tool that Kyle wants to conquer. From Omori Yakumo's character card, it can be seen that the system does not only have character cards for the main characters. Some villains in anime are also included in the prize pool of the Gasopan machine. Therefore, his ship also needs to be equipped with some ruthless villains to serve as a reserve force for future villain templates. And for Kyle, Ajin is a very easy person to win over. Not long after, the huge battleship had sailed to a place not far from the Tiga. Even though the Tiga had evolved once, it was still just a child who had just graduated from kindergarten in front of the battleships of the Click Pirates. A man covered in golden armor appeared at the bow of the huge battleship, looking down at the Tiga from top to bottom. "You are the Dusk Pirates." Click had a ferocious look on his face, holding a huge spear in his hand, looking very aggressive, as if he didn't take Kyle and the others seriously at all. However, the next second, a scene that made the Click Pirates exclaim appeared. Suddenly, a green whirlwind appeared around Kyle on the Tiga. With the help of the wind, he soon reached the same height as Click. Okay? Click's gloomy pupils suddenly trembled, and he looked at Kyle, who was lifted up by the whirlwind, with a surprised look. As the Admiral of the East China Sea, he certainly knew about the existence of devil fruits, and his brows frowned instantly. No wonder there's a bounty of 3,000 million Baileys. Is it because of the power of the fruit? For a moment, Kyle's deterrent power in Click's mind instantly increased to a higher level. However, that's all. When Kyle reached a high altitude, he first glanced at Click's side. Soon, he found Ajin in the crowd. After nodding silently, he immediately focused his attention on Click and said seriously, "Click Pirates, you are blocking our way. Are you planning to fight Dusk?" "Fight." Click showed a domineering and arrogant smile and stared at Kyle. "Is that what you should say?" Little brat. Pang. The huge spear trembled suddenly, making a heavy sound. The gun pointed directly at Kyle. The sunlight shines on Click's golden armor, making it sparkle. At this moment, he is the Emperor of Pirates. Click said proudly, "Kid, I'll give you two choices. Either surrender to me and join my pirate group, or you will sink completely into the sea under the gunfire of this fleet." Ha 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 ha. As soon as he finished speaking, Click seemed to have seen the scene of a new fruit ability user on his ship. No one could refuse him under the guns of these 50 warships. However, facing Click's naked threat, Kyle, who was standing in the wind, seemed not to have heard it and fell silent. Why is the tone of this guy's invitation exactly the same as mine? Am I always so annoying? Kyle suddenly fell into deep thought. But the next second, he suddenly spoke. "So, those warships behind you are your support?" As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned his gaze towards the fleet of warships in the distance. The wind swept under his feet and lifted him to a higher point. Under the confused gazes of the Click pirates, Kyle suddenly stepped back and made a punching gesture. A sure kill punch. Chapter 39, The First Fight of a Serious Punch. Yes. As a spy without martial ethics, Kyle had no intention of saying anything to this arrogant guy, Click. Because there is nothing to say. His choice is to go big directly. At this moment, Kyle's eyes were as sharp as swords, sweeping across the 50 warships of the Click pirates one by one. However, he did not directly select those 50 warships as the targets of his skill. Page 44. Instead, the target is set as the sails above 50 warships. After the last test, Kyle had already mastered some of the rules of this skill. At that time, the target he chose was clearly only the reef island, but the wind from his fist still caused a huge impact on the surrounding sea. In other words, although the power of the punch thrown by this skill is directed directly at the target. However, the impact force of the fist wind will still cause certain damage to the surrounding environment. This time, what Kyle needed was the impact coming from the outside of the fist wind. After selecting the target, under the effect of the skill, a mysterious energy suddenly surged in his body and continued to gather towards his fist. The calm eyes flickered slightly. Next second. Punch out. Boom. A deafening sonic boom suddenly sounded in the sky. A gust of wind suddenly blew over the heads of Click and others, and the invisible feeling of oppression made everyone's heart tremble suddenly. The strong wind was so huge that it covered most of the sea. And then, noisy screams rang out one after another. What? What's this? Help! Some pirates didn't even have time to react to what was happening before they were hit directly by the impact of the fist wind. The fist winds passed over the sails and, after completing their mission, bombarded the distant sea. All of a sudden, a wave several meters high surged towards the distance. Because of the angle, Click, who was not stuck by the storm, was startled. He trembled his legs and slowly turned his head backwards. Look around. His fleet of 50 ships was now tottering under the baptism of the storm. The vast majority of pirates were directly caught in the meat grinder-like storm, and their blood was spilled on the spot. Some of those who were lucky were either smashed into the cabin by the impact and fell unconscious, or were washed out of the pirate ship and fell into the sea, struggling. But anyway, at this moment, these 50 warships all lost their combat capability. No way. Even with Dashigi, a pirate with the strength of a billion-level pirate, Kyle could not guarantee that the Tiga would be safe and sound under the bombardment of 50 warships. Even if they could capture Click, there was no guarantee that the 50 warships would not attack Tiga. Kyle, I don't like doing things without guarantees. So he could only prevent these 50 warships from moving first. Take a deep breath. After throwing the punch, Kyle's face didn't turn red, his heart didn't beat fast, he calmly with his eyes calmly with no ripples. Under Tiga's control, he once again reached the same height as Click. But this time, he took a step forward and landed on the giant battleship where Click was. Kyle raised the corner of his mouth and smiled at Click. Now, you have no one to rely on. You. Click's legs were shaking, and the entire golden armor made a creaking sound as he shook. At this moment, Dashigi and Monka, also riding on the whirlwind, jumped from high altitude into the huge battleship and came to Kyle's side. "Captain, do you want to deal with them?" Swish! A huge scarlet scaly tail suddenly stretched out from Monka's lower back and swung in the air. Monka wielded the giant axe, his eyes were a strange red, and murderous intent gushed out. Although Dashigi on the side didn't say anything, the spiritual pressure from her body had already been radiating out, like a towering mountain, pressing down on all the pirates. Monster, monster! It was not until this moment that the pirates on the huge battleship reacted. It seems that they have offended someone they shouldn't have offended. Is this the level that East Sea pirates should have? This is the power that humans can have. There's no rush yet. Kyle stretched out his hand to suppress Monka's murderous intent, and then walked towards Click. Seeing the monster coming towards them that destroyed the mobility of all their warships with just one punch, Click's pupils suddenly contracted and his body subconsciously stepped back. Ajin, who was standing next to Click, was also trembling as he held his two hammers, with an expression of astonishment and fear on his face. "What are you going to do?" Click asked with a trembling voice. "Ha? Didn't you come to us on your own initiative?" Kyle couldn't help but laugh out loud. His laughter was so harsh in Click's ears. Swish! The icy cold sharp sword frost was unsheathed and placed directly on Click's neck. "Leader!" Seeing this, Ajin quickly swung the sledgehammer in his hand and hit Kyle, trying to save his captain. But at this moment, a red light suddenly flashed in the void. Pang! Monka waved his huge tail and knocked Ajin away directly. Then he shook the battle axe in his hand and came in front of Ajin with a wicked smile. "Boy, you actually dared to attack my boss. I think you are tired of living." "Don't be violent, Monka, we are civilized pirates." Kyle suddenly spoke up and stopped Monka from finishing off Ajin with a smile. After all, he still planned to subdue this toolman. Immediately, he looked at Click again, imitated his previous tone, and chuckled. "Now, I give you two choices. Take off your armor and hand over all your pirate group's assets and treasure locations to me. Second, you die here, and then I'll ask others." You. Feeling humiliated, Click was furious, but when he thought of the strength Kyle had shown before, all his anger cooled down in an instant. The next second, he suddenly knelt down, with a crying face like his mother had died. Don't kill me. Please. Don't kill me. Let me live, and I'll give you whatever you want." Crick burst into tears without any dignity. But at the moment he lowered his head and knelt, a ruthless look suddenly flashed in his eyes. A gun barrel suddenly extended from the armor on his shoulder, and the black muzzle was pointed at Kyle's forehead. Pang! A gunshot rang out. Ha ha! Click suddenly raised his head, mouth wide open, as if he wanted to witness Kyle's death with his own eyes. However, his expression suddenly froze in an instant. Kyle tilted his head slightly at the right angle and easily dodged the bullet. Only Ling Feng's hair was fluttering in the wind. Such a low-level trick is nothing to Kyle, who has super-intuitive sense. But he still curled his lips slightly, his eyes focused, showing a little anger. "Very good, I already know your choice." As soon as he finished speaking, the frost in Kyle's hand suddenly thrust out and stabbed directly into Click's throat. Blood flowed along the blade. At this moment, another voice suddenly stopped Kyle's action. "Wait a moment." Put. Ajin, who was being guarded by Monka with a huge axe, suddenly knelt on the ground, cowed out and shouted. "No! Don't harm the leader's life. I know where everything you want is. I can take you there. Please spare the leader's life. I am willing to use my life to appease the anger of all the adults." Seeing that the leader who saved his life was about to die under Kyle's sword, Ajin didn't care whether it would make the leader angry or not, and just shouted out loud. "Ajin, you!" Click was visibly angry and felt insulted. But at this moment, the sharp tip of the sword pierced directly into his Adam's apple, making him dare not move at all. Kyle raised his eyebrows, looked at Ajin with interest and said, How can you guarantee that what you said is true? The terrified Ajin continued to rest his head on the ground without raising it. I am the chief battle captain of the Crick Pirates. I am second only to Captain Crick in status and position. I handle a lot of the affairs of the Click Pirates. Kyle groaned. After a moment, he suddenly put away the frost, and before Click could react, he said directly to Dashigi. Dashigi, tie him up. Yes. Dashigi accepted the order immediately. Page 45. Without even chanting, she waved her hand and shot out a spirit rope, instantly binding Click's hands and feet. As her level increases, Dashigi's control over the Ghostway has become stronger and stronger. She can now easily perform this simple binding technique, which is ranked no more than 10th. Kyle put frost into the scabbard, then gently picked up the spirit rope and hung Click directly on the head of the scabbard, as if he was carrying an animal. He smiled at Ajin. Okay. Since you are so loyal, I am willing to make this deal with you. I'll take your captain away first. Next, you will exchange all of the assets of the Click Pirates for Bailey and bring them back to me. When the time comes, one hand will give over the money, and the other hand will give over the person. Thank you, sir. Ajin looked up, cried bitterly and looked at Kyle with gratitude. Kyle turned his gaze to Monka again. Monka, for the time being, just follow this guy and don't let him play any tricks on me. As for the ships behind, only their sails were broken, and the hulls didn't suffer any major damage. Let those pirates who are still alive row the boat to the port, and then sell them all. As you command, Captain. Monka was stunned for a moment, then responded with some grievance. After all, if this happens, he might not be able to practice for a long time. As if he had noticed Monka's thoughts, Kyle suddenly added. Do it well. After this mission, if there are any useful props, I will give them to you first. Thank you, Captain. Hearing Kyle's words, Monka's eyes regained their light, but he still pretended to smile foolishly. Actually, that's not what I meant. Don't give me that. Kyle chuckled and handed the situation over to Monka. He took Dashigi with him and jumped directly off the battleship and returned to the Tiga. Chapter 40 Quinquat and Black Butler. A grand naval battle came to an end. After returning to the Tiga, Kyle threw Crick directly to Little Tiga under the stunned gazes of Kobe and Nami, and said, Let's lock this guy up in the cabin on the second floor underground first. Be careful, there are powerful poison gas bombs hidden in this guy's armor. Don't let him activate the mechanism. Don't worry, Captain. Little Tiga stood at attention and saluted, then agreed with a smile. Anyway, as a ship elf, he is not afraid of poison gas bombs at all. Oh, right. Suddenly, Kyle seemed to remember something and called Tiga again. Seeing Little Tiga looking back, he quickly said, If you have time, ask him where he got the poison gas bombs and armor. There aren't many places in the East China Sea where you can get this kind of stuff. Kyle suddenly remembered that Zhang Guai asked him to come to the East China Sea originally to investigate a mysterious arms dealer. Although the supplier of the poison gas bombs and the supplier of the Shinwei cannon should not be the same company. But a guy who dares to sell weapons of mass destruction to pirates is definitely not a good person. It's just right for improving your battle records and warring states' favorability. No problem, Captain. Little Tiga responded again, and immediately summoned a green whirlwind, carrying Click, whose hands, feet and mouth were controlled, into the cabin. After dealing with Click, Kyle turned his attention to Kobe and Nami who were standing aside in a daze. He smiled. Okay, it's over. How long are you two going to stand there like idiots? What? Kobe and Nami were both stunned, and finally recovered from their surprise. Kobe was better off, after all, he had long known that his captain was no ordinary man. I just didn't expect Kyle to be so extraordinary. As for Nami, she just felt that her world was collapsing at this moment. The wall that was originally built by the Arlong pirates was suddenly shattered by Kyle's punch at that moment. In this world, there is actually someone who is so powerful. Can this really be considered a human being? Nami stared at Kyle's back, lost in thought. But Kyle didn't want to say anything more at this time. After saying hello, he went straight into the captain's room. He immediately focused his attention on the skill of Sure Kill, Serious Punch. After throwing a punch, this S-level ultimate move has entered the cooling state again. Cooling time, 287:26:23. Cooling time 287 hours? Kyle quickly calculated in his mind, about 12 days. Well, a little more than before. Even so, Kyle nodded with satisfaction. Even though the targets he chose this time were wooden sails that were far less hard than reefs. But the attack range of his punch has expanded hundreds of times compared to before. But even so, the cooldown time of the skill is less than half a month, which makes Kyle very content. Sure enough, after the strength has increased, the cooldown time of the special move has also been shortened. Next, as long as the crew members continue to work hard and train well, it won't be long before I can apply this skill to the actual battlefield. Kyle chuckled in his heart, and then he moved his mind and opened the Gashapon interface again. His Gashapon time was interrupted twice in a row, and his stubborn temper really came out. Originally, he was still thinking about whether he would have bad luck today. But now, he just felt that his luck today was extremely good. He met Nami and received the legacy of the Click Pirates. Compared to this, what does a mere 10-draw combo that failed to work out count for? It's just 10 million Baileys. After adjusting his state, Kyle sat down at his desk again, took a deep breath, and fixed his eyes. Continue. 3 Gashapon machines of different colors were placed in front of him. Kyle thought for a moment and decided to use the 1 million Baileys to draw the regular Gashapon first. Although it is not easy to get good things from ordinary capsule toys, quantity can sometimes be equivalent to quality. Anyway, they are going to plunder the Dragon Empire and the 16 branch bases next. Kyle will get another big Bailey soon. Money is meant to be squandered. With his mind connected, he clicked the button for the ordinary Gashapon 10 times in one breath. All of a sudden, a series of prompt messages flashed through Kyle's mind. Most of the hints are E-level items, which are almost useless. But among the white hints, there would occasionally be a few flashes of green light. The sharp-eyed Kyle even spotted some blue and purple messages flashing by. After all the information disappeared, he directly opened the backpack system and began to check the 1 million Baileys he had collected. His eyes swept across the lines. Soon, Kyle sorted out all the Nani-level items obtained from the 100 consecutive draws. First up is an old acquaintance, 5D-level detonating talismans. Kyle had used this thing before to blow up some things, and it was quite useful. The key is that it can be controlled anytime and anywhere, and it is very flexible to use. But now, the D-level detonating talisman can no longer move Kyle's heartstrings. After sorting it out, he looked directly at the next prop. This item is also only D-level, but its drop rate is super high, with 15 items dropped directly. Experience book, deselect a partner and increase the partner's experience points by 1,000 points immediately after use. It's actually an experience item? Well, it can be used to make up for Monka's absence. 1,000 experience points are equivalent to 1 day's training gains. Not more, not less, but better than nothing. It seems that the current D-level props can no longer satisfy my appetite. Kyle rubbed his chin and laughed softly. Out of 100 ordinary capsule toys, more than D-level items can appear. This probability is already very high. The next few D-level items are also props like the Sunblade and Ninja Tool Bag. These things hardly added anything to their current combat power. Kyle planned to find an opportunity to get rid of all these groceries at once and get the funds back. After sorting out the D-level items, Kyle's attention finally began to focus on the real surprise in these 100 consecutive draws. A B-level equipment and a C-level character card. Quink black box. Category, Weapons. Grade, B. Introduction, a weapon made from the ghoul's organ, the Kakua. After being equipped, it will form a corresponding Quinqua weapon according to the user's habits. A B-rank weapon. More importantly, unlike Zanpakutō, the Quinqua black box has no requirements or restrictions for use. All partners can use this B-level item. Page 46. However, Kyle still plans to equip Monka with this B-level item. After all, Monka has experience in manipulating the Kagun, and only he can maximize the power of this Kukin. Sure enough, today is definitely my lucky day. Looking at the Quinqua black box emitting purple light, Kyle grinned. Then, he immediately focused his attention on the last character card. The illustration on the card shows a handsome man in a neat black suit sitting on a chair with an antique feel under a gloomy sky. With hands wearing white gloves, one held a porcelain plate and the other held a cup of steaming black tea. The whole painting gives people the feeling of only two words: grace. It's so elegant. Seeing the portrait of this character card, Kyle immediately recalled the anime this character belonged to, Black Butler. And the character card he drew was one of the protagonists of this anime. Demon Butler, Sebastian Michaelis. Chapter 41: Fury of the Storm Janna. Speaking of Black Butler, it is also a very old anime. Maybe many people have not heard of the name of this anime. But for Kyle, this is an anime he will never forget. Because this anime has a very profound meaning to him. Even now, he may not remember the plot and setting of Black Butler very clearly. This anime made him realize. It turns out that boys also need to protect themselves when they go out. Back to topic. Looking at this C-level character card, Kyle immediately began to consider. Black suit, butler, devil. Hi. This character card seems to unexpectedly match the black cat claw. Kyle took a sudden breath. After all, CLO's behavior of playing with the Navy has aroused the anger in Sengoku's heart, so much so that the Marshal is even willing to use the devil fruit as a reward to make Kyle find him. As a result, he actually drew a character card that might be highly compatible with CLO. This is difficult. Kyle smacked his lips and felt a headache. Between the devil fruit and the character card, he would definitely choose the character card. But he just didn't know how he was going to convince Zhangwei to give up punishing CLO. Having said that, I was the one who started this anger myself. Is this what one brings upon oneself? Forget it, things will work out when the time comes. We'll talk about the future later. Not engaging in meaningless thinking has always been one of Kyle's strengths. After sorting out all the harvest, he switched back to the Gashapon interface. Looking at the glittering and exquisite Gasopon machine, he suddenly became energetic. Kyle murmured threateningly. System, this is the first 10 draws of the premium Gasopon machine. If you don't give me something good, it will seriously dampen my enthusiasm for consumption. You, decide for yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, Kai immediately controlled his mind and clicked on the 10 draw button of the high-quality Gasopon machine. All of a sudden, a series of colored information flashed before Kyle's eyes. Congratulations on obtaining the D-level item 3D mobile device. Congratulations on obtaining the D-level item experience book. Congratulations on obtaining the C-level item experience book. Congratulations on obtaining the B-level item character card, Momochi Zabuza. Congratulations on obtaining the A-level item Awakening Stone. Congratulations on obtaining the S-level character card, Storm's Fury Janna. Oh my goodness. Is this the power of the first draw? S. A. B. C. D. Brilliant. Kyle was stunned as he watched the golden light slowly disappearing before his eyes. He couldn't help but tightly clench the armrests of the chair with both hands, and his whole body was shaking with excitement. 10 consecutive wins at a time will directly lead to a grand slam in the prize pool. You are worthy of being the system dad, I love you so much. Kyle couldn't wait and directly opened the backpack system, then quickly scrolled down and found the S-level character card that was shining with bright golden light. This is the first S-level item he obtained after activating the system. It's a character card. I have to say, there is a gap between the S-level character card and the A-level one. It's not just the golden light around the card. Even Janna's portrait finally became the one that Kale was familiar with. I saw a plump and proud white-haired girl, lying on her side on a whirlwind with her legs together, and her smooth thighs were clearly visible from bottom to top. As the whirlwind swayed up and down, the only thin piece of cloth on the girl's body seemed to be moving, as if the slightest carelessness would lead her into the abyss of crime. As soon as Kyle's thoughts touched the portrait, the girl on the character card immediately gasped. Ah! Immediately, the girl stretched out her slender jade fingers, touched her tender lips, and said in a charming voice, "The incarnation of wind, at your beck and call." What the hell? Exactly. That's the taste. Kyle's eyes suddenly widened, and he was so excited that he didn't want to speak. It's worthy of being an S-level character card. It turns out that she is not comparable to any ordinary. It was a pity that he could no longer log in to so many of the websites he had saved. Otherwise, just based on the Wind Girl's moans, he would have had to have at least one shot with her. Oh, what a pity. Kyle's heart suddenly cooled when he thought that he would never be able to appreciate the works of those great artists again. Looking at the Wind Girl swaying up and down, he actually felt bored. I don't know if this Wind Girl and Nami can be compatible. After all, they are both wealthy and generous characters. Just based on this point, they should be able to make them more compatible, right? It's a pity that Tiga can't be a partner, otherwise with the power of the Stormfruit, he would be able to get along with the Wind Girl 100%. Speaking of which, Nami's perception of wind can be considered a natural talent, so I think it should be not much different. Kyle thought to himself for a moment and decided to find Nami to test her compatibility with the Wind Girl. His eyes turned and he immediately focused on other props. There is nothing much to say about the C-level large experience book. Its function is the same as that of the experience book, except that the added experience is increased from 1,000 to 10,000. Kyle looked directly at the B-rank character card Zabuza Momochi. Kyle had no interest in appreciating his portrait, which was just a big brown man in a vest, with his hands in seals and a fierce look in his eyes. If there's no beheading sword, do I have to draw a weapon from the gashapon machine? Or is there another way to get it? Looking at the portrait of Zabuza Momochi, Kyle immediately began to analyze it. Looking at his posture, he should be able to teach water ninjutsu to his template-loaded companions just like Rukia? In that case, this character card is very suitable for the world of pirates. Kyle's eyes lit up. There is not much in this world, but there is a lot of water. If you have a partner who can use water escape, even if you are not invincible, you will definitely have few rivals. During the Battle of Marineford, if it weren't for Akiji's ability of the Ice Fruit, Whitebeard would have been able to wipe out 90% of the Navy's grassroots combat power with just one earthquake and tsunami. It seems that when water-style ninjas fight in the sea, they get a combat power bonus. I remember that Zabuza Momochi's nickname seemed to be a demon man. There are only wrong names, not wrong nicknames. Jean, who has the same title, should be suitable for this card. It just so happens that their skin colors are quite similar, so they are definitely a good match. With anticipation and joy in his heart, Kyle once again looked at the last grand prize in this gashapon. A-level Awakening Stone. There is not much to introduce about this item either. It is used to awaken partners. But A-level template Dashigi needs 3 awakening stones to sleep. A C-level Monka only needs 1 pill for each sleep, but he is not by Kyle's side now. This is the bad thing about the system, it is not humane at all. Whether equipping weapons or using props, you must conduct a physical handover with Kyle face to face, and then Kyle will confirm it. Now that the Tiga has gone far away, he doesn't want to waste time returning. Forget it. Once we finish wiping out the Arlong pirates, we'll have money again. Then we can draw a few more rounds and maybe we can get enough for 3. Put the awakening stone with red glow back into the backpack. Kyle opened the captain's interface again. After spending the last 300 million berries, he finally accumulated points of captain experience. And he was directly upgraded to a level 3 captain. Chapter 42. Chapter 42, Moon Reading in Faith. Captain, Kyle. Level, 3. Experience value, 0/1000. Total combat power, 14,286. Skills, Super Intuition, A, Ultimate Kill, Serious Punch, S, waiting to be drawn. It's been a month, and I finally saw these 3 words again. Looking at the words to be drawn on the captain's interface, Kyle's eyes suddenly flashed with joy. During this month, they traveled all over the East China Sea, talking to the people in various small villages and towns with their emotions and reason. Tens of millions of dollars in business is not too much, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in business is not too little. It was not easy to accumulate more than $200 million. Along the way, the hard work finally paid off. However, when Kyle saw the new 4-digit experience bar, he suddenly felt helpless and sighed in his heart. I couldn't help but complain, it's only level 3, but it costs 10 billion Baileys. How ridiculous will the upgrade process be in the future? It seems that we really need to find a way to build a force that can make money. Kyle started planning silently in his mind. It stands to reason. The Straw Hat Pirates sailed all the way from the East China Sea to become the 4 emperors. Even after going through so many adventures, the total assets they held did not exceed 10 billion Baileys. Kyle and his friends have already earned hundreds of millions of Baileys just by hanging around in the East China Sea. In fact, this can be considered as a blessing from heaven. Add to that the unsettled legacy of the Click Pirates, and the upcoming settlement of the Arlong Pirates and the 16th Navy branch. The situation is still very good. But for Kyle, this is far from enough. There is no end to making money. There must be extremely profound knowledge and opportunities hidden in this. And every time Kyle thought of this, he would suddenly feel lucky. Fortunately, I have a flexible moral bottom line. If Luffy were to act the way he wanted, after defeating Crick, he would probably just let the tiger go back to the mountains, or even expect Crick to make a comeback and fight him again. After defeating the Arlong Pirates, all the property was returned to the villagers. But these things will never happen to Kyle. Although Kyle had planned to use Crick's life and freedom in exchange for Akin's loyalty. But that doesn't mean he won't secretly tip off the Navy. He will let go of people. As a captain, integrity is the most important thing. But if the lone clique is captured or killed by the Navy, that has nothing to do with him. Kyle smiled darkly in his heart. With a thought, he clicked directly on the skill bar to be drawn. In an instant, the familiar lottery disc appeared in front of him. There is still no room for any operation, and the disc rotates automatically. Kyle has become accustomed to the operation of the system. He began to calm down and waited silently. Anyway, he had already received a serious punch from Saitama as if it were destiny, and no matter what skills came next, it seemed that they would not be enough to bring him any surprises. Unless the system can give him a skill that can make a lot of money. A minute later, the disc slowly stopped rotating. A brand new illustration immediately appeared in front of Kyle's eyes. He was a paralyzed man with a black crow standing on his shoulder, with a cold and handsome expression. In the eyes of the black crow and the man, there is a pair of scarlet pupils with black magatama. The black robe with red clouds trembled slightly, and the forehead guard was split in two by a fierce scratch. Kyle recognized him instantly. Itachi Uchiha. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but show an interested expression. After all, this character is, in some ways, a great talent in the animation world. A system prompt window suddenly appeared in front of Kyle. Skill, Moon Reading. Grade, A. Introduction: the enemy's spirit can be pulled into an illusion space completely controlled by the captain. All the physical and mental pain the enemy endures in the illusion world will be consistent with reality. The specific effect depends on the difference in mental strength between the caster and the castee. It's just Tsukuyomi? Isn't it the Sharingan that the Uchiha family is so proud of? After reading the skill interface, Kyle was stunned in surprise. A hint of disappointment flashed across his eyes, but quickly disappeared. Just read it monthly. After all, it is a powerful illusion move, and it is definitely rare in the world of pirates. Just right. In this way, his mental strength, which was amplified by his partner's fighting power, could also be put to good use. The thought flashed through his mind, and a strange power suddenly emerged from Kyle's mind, as if he was born with the ability to use Tsukuyomi. He looked in the mirror and saw that his eyes had not changed into the shape of an Uchiha. So, it's really just one skill? You don't even give me the special effects of pink eye. Isn't this too perfunctory? Kyle muttered. After testing it several times, he found that there was no target and could not determine whether the skill was activated, so he had to give up for the time being. I'd better find Crick later to test the power of Tsukuyomi. If you think about it carefully, it seems like a good idea to always have a few captives on board to test new skills and moves. Anyway, the ships will get bigger and bigger in the future, so there will be no shortage of this space. Kyle stroked his chin, thinking secretly, with a devilish childish look in his eyes. After an hour. On the deck of the Tiga. Nami, who had just joined the pirate group not long ago, widened her eyes and looked at her hands in disbelief. As she thought about it, 2 white whirlwinds suddenly formed in her palms. Although it was still very weak, it was already novel enough for Nami at that time. Her bright eyes flashed with a shining light. Thinking back to what Kyle had just said to her, an unprecedented impulse suddenly surged in her heart. Nami raised her head and looked at Kyle with gratitude. Suddenly, she bent down. Maybe it was unintentional, but Kyle saw the sincere smile because of her action. But the beautiful scenery is fleeting. The orange hair sparkled in the sunlight, as if an abominable holy light had appeared, perfectly blocking the most stunning beauty in the world. Thank you, Captain Kyle, for the power. After I drive the evil dragons out of Kokoyashi village, I will be loyal to Captain Kyle forever. Nami said solemnly with a firm look in her eyes. Ha ha ha, there's no need for that. Kyle laughed, put his hand on Nami's shoulder, patted her gently, and emphasized. But you are wrong about one thing. Nami raised her head, her moist eyes revealing a hint of confusion. Kyle smiled and said, We are not going to expel the Arlong pirates from your village. Instead, we must completely wipe them out from this ocean. Captain. Excited Nami subconsciously clenched her fists, and a fierce flame of revenge instantly burst out of her eyes. She answered loudly, yes. Haha, okay. Kyle gave Nami an encouraging look and said with a smile. Go to the training room and find Dashigi. She will tell you what to do next. Perhaps once you reach Kokoyashi village, you'll have the chance to kill the dragon yourself. Please rest assured, Captain Kyle. I will definitely not let you down. Nami bowed deeply to Kyle again solemnly, then turned around and walked quickly into the cabin. Come on, Miss Nami. Looking at Nami's slim back, Kyle's mouth corners slightly raised, revealing a gratified smile. As he expected, the compatibility between Nami and the S-level character card Storm Fury Janna exceeded 60 and reached 75. So he didn't hesitate at all and directly merged this S-level character template with Nami. After Nami left, Kyle's mind suddenly moved, and an interface where Nami and Janna coexisted suddenly appeared in his mind. Partner, Nami, Storm's Fury, Janna. Qualification, S. Level, 1. Experience, 0 out of 100. Combat power, 38. Total qualification, 380. Strength qualification, 60. Physical qualification, 60. Agility qualification, 80. Spiritual qualification, 180. Page 48. Total aptitude, 380. Spiritual aptitude, 180. It looks like another character who is similar to Dashigi and relies on magic to fight. Although my total talent is 20 points less than that of Dashigi, who is equipped with a Zanpakutō. But... Kyle frowned slightly as he stared at Nami's attribute panel, with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Just now when Nami used the power of Hurricane, he felt a very strange energy. It is a new type of energy that is completely different from spiritual power, fruit ability, and physical strength. Although Kyle was not an expert in energy research, he could sense the power that Nami had activated. It seems to be called the Power of Faith. Chapter 43, Demon World. So, this is the difference between S-level character cards and other level character cards? Kyle thought to himself. In his impression, Janna the Storm's Fury seemed to be a god condensed by the power of faith. Her name once spread throughout the coast of Shirima. Countless Zon residents greet and pray to the Naga warmly before setting out to sea. Janna's strength will also increase with the number and piety of her believers. Could it be possible that Nami could gain faith and become a god in the pirate world? A bold idea arose in Kyle's mind. But soon, he took the initiative to extinguish the flame of this idea. No, an S-level character from the system should not have the ability to jump out of the system rules. There were so many S-level characters in the previous mobile game, and there were many characters more powerful than Janna. It's impossible that all cards can become stronger like Janna. Nami should still only be able to gain power through leveling up, awakening forms, etc. More likely. What's special is not the S rank, but the character card behind Nami. A god condensed by the power of faith. Kyle's mind was racing. In Janna's background story, she seems to always be able to protect her believers and respond to their prayers, so her believers become more and more numerous, and she becomes more and more powerful. In that case, Nami, who also uses the power of faith, may be able to replicate Janna's operations. The power of faith should not only give Nami the ability to create storms, but also give her the ability to establish connections with believers. And in the world of pirates, there are so many people who need the protection of the storm god. If Nami could really establish a connection with all the believers, even if she cannot absorb the power of faith of believers to become stronger, the fact that she can establish connections with all believers is enough to create an intelligence network covering the world for the Dusk Pirates. Be good. If this really works, I can make a lot of money just by selling information every day. At this moment, Kyle seemed to see a picture of himself soaring to the sky in the future and owning all the money in the world. The shining light shone in its dark eyes like bright stars in the night sky. Kyle licked his lips subconsciously, showing a greedy expression. 7 days passed quickly. And Kyle's guess was confirmed again. On the Tiga, in the temporary prison on the second underground floor. Like an enlightened monk, Click knelt devoutly in front of a portrait of Nami painted by Kobe. No one knows what he went through during these 7 days. Lynching, dismemberment, bone crushing, buttonholes, needle stabbing. Click would impose almost any punishment that Kyle could think of. Under Kyle's moon reading skill, he experienced countless deaths, and also countless times of being unable to die. After countless reincarnations in Kyle's behind-the-scenes manipulation, Click has completely changed his appearance and has become a devout follower of the Storm Witch Nami. Yes. Storm Witch is the name that Kale gave to Nami. The reason why she was named Witch was because he didn't want to establish Nami's image as a saint who does good deeds for the world. Holy Mother, there is often no good ending. Just like Janna's final fate. Even though the believers were dispersed and the temple was destroyed, she still had to sacrifice herself to save others for some false believers who came at the last minute. Kyle was happy to see and wholeheartedly respected the presence of Our Lady. But the prerequisite is that Virgin Mary cannot be himself or the people around him. So he gave Nami the name of Witch and set the doctrine. Exchange wealth for the blessing of the Storm Witch. This teaching perfectly matches Nami's greedy personality. And Kyle can also use this doctrine to take the opportunity to collect money. As for his previous speculation about Nami and the power of faith, it was completely correct. After Click believed in Nami, Nami did establish a connection with the believer Click. But other than that, she did not gain any power of faith from Click. Her strength still depends on the combat effectiveness brought by her level and qualifications. Fortunately, Kyle had guessed this long ago, so he didn't think it was such a pity. What a shame. I promised to let you go, but ended up turning you into this. In front of the door of the underground prison of the Tiga, Kyle shamelessly pretended to be regretful and said. Opposite him, Click, who was praying to Nami, slowly opened his eyes. There was no longer any trace of tyranny or arrogance in his eyes. Instead, they were as calm as a pool of stagnant water. Click, who has died countless times, seems to have even improved his IQ. He looked at Kyle and suddenly grinned. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way you'll let me go. Perhaps recalling the memories in the Tsukuyami space, the corners of his eyes couldn't help but twitch painfully, but were quickly suppressed by the devout faith in his heart. Only when he prayed would he not think of the tragic memory of being tortured. Oh? Kyle asked curiously, did you guess it? Ha! Click chuckled. Given Lord Kyle's style of doing things, there's no way he'd let me, a guy who hates you and wants you to go to hell, live in this world, right? From the beginning, your target should have been Ajin, who was beside me. That guy not only has a talent far beyond that of an ordinary person, but he is also obviously stronger than me, yet he is still willing to work for me without complaint. He is indeed a loyal and talented person. Kyle was silent for a moment. To be honest, it always feels weird to talk to you like this now. How about you recover a bit? I still like the rebellious you from before. Ha ha. Click chuckled again, there's no going back. Okay. Kyle shrugged, showing a bit of helplessness, but still said with a little interest. In fact, if you had this attitude at the beginning, I wouldn't have used Tsukuyomi on you so many times. Ha ha. Click looked up at Kyle with a half-smile. It's all because of my many evil deeds. I have brought this upon myself. Death is not a bad thing for me now. But even if I die, I believe that my hatred for you, sir, will not dissipate in the slightest. Perhaps my fate has already been determined. After being squeezed dry of every last bit of value, committing suicide on a deserted island would be my best destination. Kyle was silent again, with surprise in his eyes, and couldn't help asking. Could it be possible that believing in Nami can also improve one's IQ? This Click looks like a completely different person than before. Even though Kyle was the culprit behind all this, he still felt extremely surprised. In response to his question, Click just smiled indifferently. It's just that you can look at the problem from another perspective. Okay. Kyle felt like he was talking to a boring monk. He nodded slightly, looked at Click, and after thinking for a long time, he suddenly said, "Actually, I don't intend to let you die after using you. That just means I'm still useful to you." Click interrupted Kyle. "Alright, you win." Kyle smiled slightly, looked at Click, who was sitting in oblivion, and said, "In fact, I will send the Navy to arrest you as soon as you gain freedom." Send the Navy? Hearing this unexpected word, Click's expression finally showed some movement. But Kyle ignored it and continued. "After being arrested by the Navy, you will be sent to the judicial island to be judged for the crimes you committed. Then, based on your crimes and strength, you should be sent to level 1 of the deep-sea prison in Down. Why do you know so much about the Navy?" Page 49. It was a rare moment for the believer Click to ask Kyle a question. Kyle raised the corner of his mouth, looked at Click with a playful look, and said, "Because I am originally from the Navy." Click fell silent suddenly, his pupils trembling slightly. But soon, as if he recalled some bad experience, he began to recite the teachings of the Storm Witch Church in his mind. First, money is something outside of one's body. Second, all the wealth in the world should belong to the witch. Third, believe in the witch and you will gain eternal life. Fourth. Fifth. After hearing one strange teaching after another, Click quickly regained his composure. His eyes flashed, and he looked directly at Kyle and said, "So, what does Lord Kyle want me to do?" Kyle smiled. "It's very simple. Although we who are on the Tiga can freely travel across the sea. But the world is so big, there are always some places that I cannot reach with my current strength. I need you to enter the deep-sea prison and establish a church there that believes in Storm Witch Nami. You also know that this so-called faith is nothing but a poison I set for you. But next, I want you to turn this goo into a truly convincing doctrine. As for Nami, I'll ask her to cooperate with you. And you, criminal Click, you will be the Archbishop of this Storm Witch Church. How? Are you willing to enter the deep-sea prison and spread the witch's faith for the Storm Witch Nami?" As Kyle finished speaking, Click suddenly lowered his head. The shadow covered his eyes, making it impossible for Kyle to see his expression. But he could feel. The corners of Click's mouth seemed to be slowly opening. The next second, Click suddenly looked up. And his face returned to its previous arrogance and madness. But deep in his eyes, there was a brighter and hotter fire of faith burning. The believer Click grinned and said, "That will be the only thing I will do in my remaining life." Chapter 44 Bloodbath of the Dragon Empire. very good. Looking at Click's current state, Kyle immediately showed a satisfied smile on his face. Obviously he had underestimated the power of Tsukuyami's skills before. When the gap in mental power is strong enough, he can even use the power of infinite time and infinite space in Tsukuyami space to change a person's spirit, consciousness, and even memory out of thin air. Now, after a long period of torture, Click has completely turned into the shape that Kyle wanted. And this was because it was Kyle's first time using Tsukuyami and he did not fully master this skill. Fortunately, Click himself is a very evil pirate, so Kyle can experiment on him without any guilt. As for letting him establish the witch cult, it was actually an idea that Kyle came up with on a whim after discovering Click's condition. As the world's largest concentration of criminals, the city of Push has held countless notorious and powerful criminals. After years of being isolated, many of them have developed mental problems. People at this time need the support of faith. Even the clown Bucky can gain a large number of followers. I believe that Click, who has become a high monk, will not disappoint him. After these criminals become believers, Nami can learn the information in their memories from their mouths. For example, the treasures they hid before being imprisoned, the places where the stolen goods were sold, the gathering places of criminals, and the sources of weapons. This information can not only bring Kyle enough wealth, but also allow him to greatly increase the favorability of Marshal Zhanghua. In this way, he would have enough capital to make some demands to the Navy. Monka and Rat, the two scums of the Navy, were the appetizers he gave to the warring states. These nests that nourish pirates are the key to truly changing the pattern of the ocean. After leaving the underground prison, Kyle walked back to the deck of the Tiga. The Tiga, riding the wind and waves, sailed at high speed on the sea. The oncoming waves were cut in half by the sword-like hull, turning into white foam waves and dissipating to the left and right sides of the hull. At the same time, not far in front of the Tiga, a large building that was very similar in shape to a naval base slowly appeared in Kyle's sight. That was the purpose of their trip. The Fishman Paradise built by the Dragon Pirates, the Dragon Empire. A paradise exclusively for fishmen. Under the leadership of the evil dragon, a group of fishmen who were released from prison lived in this luxurious dragon empire, enjoying the good times they could not have imagined before. A few years ago, humans were the nightmare of all of them fishmen. Once they are caught by humans, they will be branded with the ugly mark of slavery and become commodities in the hands of humans. And now, under the leadership of their big brother the evil dragon, these fishmen not only occupied human territory, but also kept a large number of humans in captivity for their own use. This is the life that fishmen should enjoy. After sighing, Ajan lay on a lounge chair by the swimming pool, enjoying the warm sunshine and taking a nap comfortably. Tomorrow is the day they go to Kikoyashi village to collect protection fees. When he thought of the fear and helplessness on the faces of humans in front of them, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction in his heart. Hey hey! Half asleep, he let out an unpleasant laugh. But at this moment, a burst of noise suddenly interrupted his sweet dream. Damn it! A bunch of guys without fins. Can't you let me sleep well? Ajan opened his eyes, cursing. But next, a scene that made him dumbfounded appeared. Ha! A violent tornado, like magic, appeared out of nowhere in the center of the Dragon Empire. The wind is howling. Everything on the ground was being swallowed by the storm. Under the influence of the high-speed airflow, Zhang only felt a huge force pulling his body. He subconsciously wanted to grab the recliner beside him to increase his weight. However, the next second, he and the recliner in his hand were swept into the horrible storm and were instantly enveloped by the violent hurricane. A painful tearing feeling appeared in the body of the fishman Zhang. He stretched out his hand, his eyes trembling, and wanted to make a sound for help. But in the strong wind, he couldn't make any sound. Until... Phew! As if being cut by a sharp blade, the fishman Zhang's body was suddenly torn into several pieces by the storm, and blood gushed out. And in the storm, there were countless murlocs who suffered the same fate as him. Who is it? Under the building of the Dragon Empire. The shark, fishman, and evil dragon looked at everything in front of them with red eyes. As a pirate from the New World, he knew that the storm before him could never be caused by the natural climate of the East China Sea. There must be someone with power attacking them. At the same time, several leaders of the Arlong pirates also broke free from the storm through their own strength. But compared to the dragon that was not affected by the storm at all, they looked extremely embarrassed. Almost every cadre had bloody scratches of varying sizes on his body. Evil dragon! Suddenly, an angry shout suddenly came from the sky. The swirling storm suddenly dissipated. Countless fishmen limbs and arms mixed with blood fell down like raindrops. The originally picturesque dragon empire instantly turned into a hell on earth. The sky is filled with blood and debris. High in the sky, Nami stood in the air, with flames of anger in her eyes. All the grievances of many years burst out at this moment. Nami! Why is it you? Seeing the enemies attacking the Dragon Empire, Dragon and others immediately showed expressions of disbelief. But before they could react to what was happening, an extremely hot breath suddenly came from the gate of the evil Dragon Empire. The next moment, raging flames swept in all directions and suddenly hit the gate. Under the impact of the terrifying flames, the wall connecting to the gate was blasted into pieces and collapsed in an instant. Immediately afterwards, another storm swept in, forming a barrier channel composed of green air vortices. The silhouette of the Tiga slowly sailed in along the swimming pool of the Dragon Empire, encountering the bloody storm. Kyle at the bow glanced at Nami in the sky and laughed proudly. Page 50. It seems that this opening is very popular with the audience, Nami. It seems so. Nami sneered. Then she waved her hand, slowly flew to the Tiga, and stood respectfully behind Kyle. It's you! When the evil dragon saw the sudden appearance of the mighty Tiga and the figure on board Tiga, his eyes widened instantly. At this moment, he had already recognized the identities of Kyle and others. After all, that fluttering pirate flag is so eye-catching. The dragon gnashed his teeth and roared angrily. Nami! Kyle! What have you done? Are you looking for death? Court death. Nami on the Tiga sneered disdainfully. Do you want to open your dog eyes wide and take a good look at who is looking for death now? Let me tell you, evil dragon. Your death has come. Chapter 45 Girl, do you know about pyramid schemes? Kwang Feng. Listen to my command. Boom. The moment Nami finished speaking, a violent hurricane suddenly surged out from her body, sweeping towards the evil dragon and his companions like a tsunami. Hidden in the fierce wind are countless tiny wind blades formed by air pressure. Like countless knives, stabbing at all the fishmen who were still able to breathe. In an instant, the powerful airflow enveloped the entire Dragon Empire. The strong wind is destroying everything. Looking at the scene in front of her, Nami's eyes revealed a look of determination and pain. She was determined to kill all the fishman pirates who oppressed the Cocoa Village, but the pain was. She failed to meet Kyle earlier and failed to save Belmere. Fortunately, it's all over. 2 lines of tears quietly flowed down the corners of Nami's eyes. She pressed her hands together, and the horrific storm returned and swept across, impacting the entire Dragon Empire once again. Finally, under the ravages of the wind, the Empire Building, which represented the rule of the evil dragon, collapsed. Countless fishmen who were still struggling to survive were crushed by the collapsed walls and completely lost the right to live. As expected of an S-level character, he can cast such violent magic at only level 29. On the Tiga, when Kyle saw Nami bursting out with all her strength, a gleam of bright light suddenly flashed in his eyes. In order to allow Nami to kill her enemies personally, he generously gave the sea-level experience book to Nami. This can be considered as a small investment for her to establish the storm witch cult as soon as possible. After all, the higher her level, the more power of faith she can use. Nami is level 29 and has the power of Divine Wind. Although her overall strength is far inferior to that of Dashigi at this time. But it is more than enough to deal with those little fishmen in the East China Sea. At the same time, inside the ruins of a collapsed building, the evil dragon, with a broken head and blood all over his body, used all his strength to finally lift up the rubble that was pressing on him, and crawled out of the ruins. However, what came into his sight at this moment was a dilapidated scene. The entire Dragon Empire was completely destroyed by the storm, and its former glory could no longer be seen. More importantly, the evil dragon's eyes trembled as he looked at everything in front of him in disbelief. Krubi, Jio. Xiaba. All dead, all dead. For a moment, the evil dragon's eyes turned red as he couldn't accept the reality. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Nami on the Tiga. His teeth seemed to be broken, and he shouted angrily. Damn humans! Nami! I will kill everyone in Kokoyashi village. I will make you suffer unbearably. Noisy! Looking at the clown-like dragon standing on the ruins, Nami felt for the first time that she had really been reborn. She waved her hand. A sharp blade flew out again, slashing straight at the dragon's neck, completely ending his sinful and ugly life. It's all over. Watching the evil dragon's head fall to the ground with its eyes still open, Nami's eyes flickered and she murmured softly as if it was unreal. At this moment, Kyle's voice suddenly appeared beside her. It is indeed over. He quickly scanned the ruins and soon found the only small room protected by the wind barrier. So, that's the treasure room of the Arlong Pirates? That's right. Nami nodded in response. At the same time, two pairs of eyes sparkling with greedy golden light flashed at the same time. Kyle and Nami slowly turned their heads to look at each other, their eyes instantly meeting. All of a sudden, they both felt the strong desire for money in each other's eyes. The two sides looked at each other for a long time. In the end, I don't know whether it was due to the system's 100% loyalty or Nami's conscience. She actually took the initiative to give in, took a step back, and then said in a tone that was even sadder than sadness. Please. Captain, please make the decision. Damn it, my money. Ha ha ha, then I'll respectfully obey your command. Kyle suddenly waved his hand, then walked towards the treasure room with a big laugh. Kirby, come and help me move the stuff. After half an hour. After counting the savings of the Arlong Pirates, Kyle sat on the chair in the captain's room with a wild grin on his face. Although it was expected, when the 5 million Baileys in cash and various valuable treasures with inestimable value were put into the safe, Kyle's heart inevitably began to beat violently. 5 billion Baileys. This is enough for him to conduct 500 ordinary gacha draws or 50 premium gacha draws in the system. With this money, the strength of their pirate group will be greatly improved. And this. That doesn't even include the 16th naval branch that's waiting for them to plunder. Life is getting better and better. Kyle laughed happily. At this moment, little Tiga suddenly appeared in the captain's room. Captain Kyle, Nami said her sister and the villagers are here, and she wants me to invite you to meet everyone. Oh? Nami's sister is Nojiko. She's finally here. If she hadn't come, I would have gone to look for her myself. Kyle smiled slightly, but did not stand up. Instead, he said to Tiga, I won't go there. I, Kyle, am a great pirate from the East China Sea. How can I be so close to the common people? Let Nami and her sister come over. It's just right. I have something to communicate with her. At this time, on the ruins of the Dragon Empire, a group of villagers from Kikoyashi village who rushed to the scene after hearing the news stared in amazement at what they saw. Even though Nami had explained it to them several times, they still couldn't accept it for a while. The evil dragon pirate group that had oppressed them for many years was actually destroyed by Nami herself. And the reason for all this is actually because Nami has just joined the pirate group? Although they believed in Nami's judgment, looking at the pirate flag flying on the mast of the Tiga, they are still somewhat worried in their hearts. After all, for ordinary villagers, the word pirate is not a friendly synonym for them. Who knows if after the destruction of the Arlong Pirates, a new pirate group will take over their positions. The main reason is that everything happened too suddenly, causing many people to be unaware of the situation. Nojiko, who had already followed Nami onto the Tiga, had the same concerns. But because she was about to meet Kyle, she had to hide her doubts for the time being. Captain Kyle, I'm coming in.
After her revenge was successful, Nami, feeling relaxed, pushed open the door of the captain's room and walked in directly with Nojiko, smiling.
Here, Kyle has prepared tea and snacks. He smiled gently and gestured with his hand. Page 51. Is this your sister? Please take a seat. With a nervous mood, Nojiko slowly sat down opposite Kyle. She asked cautiously. Mr. Kyle, thank you for everything you have done for Kokoasi Village. Excuse me, you asked me to come here, is there something you want to tell me? Nature.
Kyle nodded without any concealment, then smiled and pushed the tea and snacks in front of Nojiko, telling her not to be nervous.
Then he got straight to the point and said, Nami's sister, Miss Nachigo. I came to you today because I do have something I want to ask you for help with. But before that, I want to ask you a question. Kyle raised his head, looked at Nojiko with a smile, and asked. I don't know about you, have you ever heard of religious beliefs? Chapter 46, The Divine Man Nokigo. Religious faith? What is that? Not knowing what was going on, Nokigo was stunned for a moment, then asked in a low voice. Under her smooth light blue hair, there was a pair of confused eyes, and her slender fingers were fiddling with their fingers awkwardly. Although Nokigo has always been mature and steady. But Nami, who had just met them a month ago, suddenly destroyed the dragon pirates after a trip to the sea. This operation, which seemed like a lifetime ago, was really beyond the dark-skinned girl's expectations and made her feel extremely unreal. Like a dream. Looking at the nervous dark-fleshed girl in front of him, Kai chuckled and said, Don't be so nervous, Miss Nachigo. Since you are Nami's sister, you can naturally be considered half of our family. We don't need to be so restrained when we talk among ourselves. He paused for a moment, then continued to explain. As for religious belief, it's just the literal meaning. As he spoke, Kyle nodded to Nami beside him. Nami, who was waiting, understood instantly. A sweet smile appeared on her face, and she stretched out her hand in front of Nojiko, like a child showing off her certificate to her family. Nojiko, don't you still not believe that I killed the dragon with my own hands? Nami said with a smile. Ah. Nojiko opened her mouth slightly and said slowly, It's not that I don't believe it, it just feels unreal. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing an awkward yet polite smile. All this was so dreamy that she couldn't immediately accept this beautiful reality. But at this moment, Nami suddenly smiled slyly. Is it? Then try this. Ha! As she spoke, a strong storm suddenly emerged from Nami's palm. The wind pressure was like an invisible big hand, playing with Nojiko's body all over. What? Nojiko let out a scream instantly. She was caught off guard and her body suddenly leaned back. Because she was lying sideways, there was no chair back to support her. She suddenly lost her balance and fell backwards. However, at this moment, another gust of wind suddenly appeared from her back, as if someone suddenly put his arms around her and supported her body perfectly. There was a hint of mischief in Nami's bright eyes, and she said with a grin. What do you think, Nojiko? Are you still doubting my ability to kill the dragon? I am no longer the Nami you knew who only knew how to steal things. You? Feeling the continuous wind behind him that was as soft as a quilt, Nojiko suddenly looked confused. At this time, Nami waved her hand and controlled the wind pressure to help her up again. And the next second, her eyes were instantly occupied by a green divine light. Wisps of gentle breeze surrounded her body, like stars guarding the sun, gently lifting her body up. Nami stood in midair and showed it to Nojiko. As you can see, Nojiko, I have gained a magical power called the Power of Faith under Captain Kyle's transformation. At the same time, I also gained the divine authority to control the storm. I will follow the wind. Call. A breeze caressed Nojiko's face, comfortable and gentle. Nojiko blinked blankly, looking at Nami in shock as she was surrounded by the breeze. Although she still didn't understand what Nami meant. But she seemed to understand something. That is Nami at this moment, very awesome. Cough cough. Kyle suddenly coughed twice at this moment.
Seeing Nojigo shift his gaze towards him, Kel smiled and said,
Ms. Nachigo, just as Nami said, she has now obtained the divine authority to use the power of faith. With such godlike power, she is destined not to be confined to the small East China Sea. In the near future, Nami will follow me into a wider world. Before that, in order to prevent villains like the Arlong Pirates from persecuting Kokoyashi Village or other villages and towns, Nami and I plan to establish a Storm Demon Goddess cult in the East China Sea. The Storm Demon Cult? Nojigo muttered the name, frowning slightly. That's right.
Kyle nodded and explained, Nami, who possesses the authority of God, can communicate with believers through their faith and can even temporarily grant believers some power. And the deeper the believer's faith, the greater the power she can bestow upon them. As long as the Koko village has enough devout believers, even if pirates come again next time, you will have the power to protect yourself.
Can you understand what I'm saying?
Kyle's dark eyes flashed with intelligence, and he looked at Nojigo expectantly.
Yeah. Nojigo nodded hesitantly.
She had a very high IQ and had read a lot of books, so she quickly understood what Kyle said. But precisely because of her understanding, she was in deep shock at this moment. After a moment, Nojigio's eyes flashed, and the look he gave Nami suddenly became different.
She asked curiously, does that mean Nami has become a god now? Not yet.
Kyle chuckled, but in the future, I can't say for sure.
Although for Donghai, Nami's strength is already unmatched. But she is only level 29.
In the New World or even the Grand Line, she is actually just a stronger fruit ability user. However, after a while, when Nami, who has S-level qualifications, has used up all 3 awakening opportunities, she will be equipped with an S-level weapon. Possessing the ability to control the power of faith, she might be able to become a god.
It's a true god. Kyle suddenly asked, Ms. Nachigo, as Nami's sister, would you be willing to help Nami and establish such a church that believes in her in the East China Sea? Noki looked at Nami and nodded without hesitation. Of course I do. But... Very good.
Before Nojigo could finish his words, Kyle suddenly clapped his hands and laughed, then said directly,
as long as you are willing, just do it.
Everything else will be taken care of by our Dusk Pirates. Kyle suddenly took out a nautical chart of the East China Sea from under his desk, pointed to a few islands on it and said, now that Nami has just destroyed the Arlong Pirates, it is the best time to establish the cult. You and Nami can first travel to several small islands in this sea area.
One of you will be responsible for performing miracles, and the other will be responsible for enticing the people to believe in Nami.
You can say that Nami is possessed by a god, or that a god is reincarnated. In short, such unverifiable statements will always make some people believe them. When the opportunity is right, we will attract people to join the church in large numbers. Then we will slowly develop and radiate the faith channel to the surrounding islands. Kyle slowly began to speak of his growth plan for the cult.
Aha! Listening to Kyle's introduction, Nojigo nodded repeatedly in response.
But as Kyle introduced her, her eyes became more and more weird. For some reason, after listening to Kyle's plan, a strange idea suddenly popped up in her mind.
It seems that what Captain Kyle in front of him wants him to do is to trick more people into joining the team that believes in Nami? Weird. It sounded quite high-sounding just now. How come I suddenly became a charlatan?
Chapter 47 The Wind of Faith, Follow the Wind.
Kyle's plan is simple and complicated at the same time.
His plan was to use the connection between the believers and Nami to establish a church in the East China Sea with the main purpose of protecting civilians.
The purpose of this church is not to promote truth, goodness, and beauty. Instead, it induces believers to buy power from the church.
According to the degree of faith of the believers, he tentatively divides the believers into 5 levels.
There are general believers, shallow believers, true believers, devout believers, and fanatical believers. Page 52.
Among them, pan-believers are those who only know the name of God but do not think they need the help of God.
Shallow believers will believe a little bit, but it depends more on what they can gain.
As for true believers and devout believers, they are all shallow believers, with a higher level of faith and a lower desire for rewards.
A fanatic is a believer who is willing to do anything for his belief and is somewhat crazy. Believers of different levels need to pay a certain amount of protection fees to the church every year, commonly known as membership fees. The higher the level, the more money you need to pay. But conversely, the believers can borrow more power from Nami. The more times they can borrow power, and the longer the power will last. Of course, the power bestowed is not without limits. Depending on the degree of faith of the believers in Nami, the power of faith will be consumed to a certain extent during the process of bestowing power. The ratio of this loss is as high as 10 to 1 and as low as close to 1, but it will never be equal to 1. After being granted power, Nami's strength will decrease and she will not be able to fight with her full strength. How to deal with the trade-off between granting power to believers and collecting Pele will be the biggest challenge Nami and the others will face next. Because this question is too difficult. So Kyle decided to leave the matter entirely to Nami and Nojiko to handle. He believed that with Nami and Nojiko's intelligence, they could handle the matter. Then everything is up to you. Please rest assured, Captain Kyle. A whirlwind blew by, and Nami and Nojiko waved goodbye to Kyle. In the next period of time, Nami will briefly leave the Tiga and follow Nasco to all the villages that have been persecuted by the evil dragon to perform miracles and harvest faith. And the Tiga will not waste time here. Kyle and his team will continue to move forward towards the G16 naval branch. Although this might prevent Nami from gaining experience points for a long time. But compared to the profits brought by the establishment of the church, this small effort is worth it. Kyle also planned to arrest Colonel Mouse as soon as possible before the G16 naval branch learned about the demise of the Arlong pirates. In this way, he could also harvest some more favorable evidence from the Mouse. To know. G16 naval branch, but a double-digit naval branch. The weapons and ammunition reserves it possesses are far beyond what the G153 branch where Monka is located can match. After looting there, they can go to various small villages and towns to engage in arms trafficking business. The identity of arms dealer is very useful, and Kyle has no plans to take off this vest in the short term. He also wanted to sell weapons to all those in need in the East China Sea through the church's channels after the Witch Church was established. With Nami's power of faith as a detection channel, they can easily know who really needs weapons and who wants to use weapons to do evil. In the chaotic world of pirates, weapons are always in short supply. Pirates need weapons when they go to sea, countries need weapons when they go to war, and civilians need weapons to defend themselves. Recently, Kyle has been considering whether to seize a few weapons manufacturing factories. With Click's complete escape, he now controls the locations of many underground factories in the East China Sea. Even pirates know the principle of exhausting all resources. Almost no pirates would want to provoke these private factories that are willing to provide them with weapons. Of course. The more important reason is that behind these factories, there are often some powerful forces hidden behind them. For example, Kyle knows of a large gun and ammunition factory. According to Click, the factories seem to be supported by an underground king. The code name of the underground king is Joker. Joker? The Joker, is that Doflamingo? I didn't expect that his business has already reached the East China Sea. It seems that the Navy and the world government's control over the four seas is not as strong as they imagined. The bow of the Tiga. Under Tiga's control, wisps of breeze blew on Kyle's face, bringing a comfortable feeling of wind. He looked up at the distant sky and muttered to himself. Now is not the time to get in touch with those big shots. For the truly strong, the current Dusk Pirates are still too weak. As a man who is familiar with the entire world of pirates, he would not think of himself as a big shot just because of his arrogant habits in the East China Sea. Needless to say, for the monsters in the New World, any random cadre under the four emperors can now easily annihilate the Dusk Pirates. The revolution has not yet succeeded, perhaps that's what it means? Kyle's eyes flashed, and he subconsciously glanced in the direction of the cabin. Today, the Tiga has returned to its former deserted days. Kirby is cleaning the cabin. Dashigi is still practicing hard in the training room. Kyle might have turned on some mysterious switch in Dashigi's body. Ever since she obtained the character template and got rid of the problem of women's inherent lack of talent in combat,
she has been training non-stop in the training room like a madman.
And this is exactly the scene that Kyle wanted to see. Only,
the level 2 training room seems to be unable to keep up with Dashigi's training level.
Kyle murmured.
As he spoke, his consciousness moved and he suddenly opened the dock interface in the system.
Tiga. Level 2. Experience value 0/300. Facilities 5/6. 12A2B21. Looking at the detailed information of the Tiga on the interface, Kyle pondered for a moment. I have 5 million Baileys in my hand right now. If I use them to draw Gashapon, I might be able to get some good character cards or items. But, with a thought, Kyle clicked on Dashigi's attribute interface again. Partner, Dashigi, Rukia Kachiki. Qualification, A. Level, 40. Experience, 50/5000. Combat power, 32,800. Total qualification, 400. While Kyle and the two beautiful girls, Nami and Nokiko, were conspiring in the captain's room for tomorrow. Having nothing to do, Dashigi did not waste time, but returned to the training room to continue completing today's training tasks. Hard work pays off. Just now, she had successfully upgraded from level 39 to level 40. His strength has also been completely consolidated at the level of a billion-level pirate. Even if she were placed in the Navy headquarters, an ordinary vice admiral would not be her match. However, from her attribute panel, we can see it takes at least 5 days for Dashigi to reach a new level now. And as her level increases, her upgrade speed will become slower and slower. Although Kyle also knew that it was unrealistic to want to become a big shot in one bite and make Dashigi as powerful as the Shichibukai or the Four Emperors. But the sooner the training room is upgraded, the greater the benefit to him. The thought flashed through his mind and Kai made a decision immediately. He suddenly shouted to the watchtower. Tiga, go call Dashigi and Kobe to the deck. Next, I will give you a third comprehensive transformation. Chapter 48 Level 3 Training Room. The mysterious colorful light shines on the body of the Tiga. Perhaps because the changes this time were too great, the light of evolution lasted for several minutes before slowly dissipating. When everything was settled, Kyle and the other two standing on the deck waiting suddenly had a look of amazement in their eyes. Finished. Looking at the size of the Tiga, which had more than doubled again, Kyle immediately showed an excited expression. After the last evolution of Tiga, its size more than doubled, from a small sailing ship to a medium-sized sailing ship. Now, after evolving again, the size of Tiga has increased again. Looking around, the distance from the bow to the stern is at least hundreds of meters. Seeing this, Kyle couldn't help but laugh in his heart. As I recall, an aircraft carrier is only about 300 or 400 meters long. It looks like it won't be long before I can own an aircraft carrier of my own. Kirby. Kyle suddenly called out. Ha, here. Kobe, who was standing next to Kyle, was stunned at first, then he immediately stood up straight and responded seriously. After a long period of arduous special training, Kobe's body shape finally showed some changes. Although he hasn't completely gotten rid of his skinny appearance, at least people won't mistake him for a child anymore. Kyle turned around and suddenly patted Kobe on the shoulder twice. I'll have to trouble you in the future. For a ship this big, cleaning will definitely be a big problem. I don't know if Kobe can hold on. Ha? Kobe blinked stupidly, somewhat confused. Page 53. On the other side, the quiet girl Dashigi stroked the railing of the Tiga, her eyes flashing. The next moment, she suddenly exerted force with her fingers and grabbed the railing of the boat hard, and immediately showed a look of shock. She loosened her hand and was shocked to see that the place she had just held was still so smooth and clean, without any trace. What's wrong, Dashigi? Kyle's voice suddenly appeared in her ears. Dashigi was stunned for a moment, then her face turned red, like a student who was caught doing something naughty. She said a little embarrassedly. Sorry, Captain Kyle. Just now, I suddenly wanted to test the hull defense of the Tiga, so I used a little force. What's the result? Kyle did not blame Dashigi, but instead showed a curious expression. Shocked.
Dashiki's tone suddenly changed. She looked at the railing seriously and said, I feel now that even if I use my strongest power to attack Tiga with all my strength, I may not be able to harm Tiga at all.
Oh. Is it that amazing? Kyle's eyes lit up, and he was shocked by what Dashigi said. There is no doubt about Dashigi's strength.
Even if she is placed in the first half of the Grand Line, she is enough to deter many small pirates.
If even she can't harm Tiga. Doesn't that mean that ordinary shells can't harm the Tiga?
In this way, they will never have to worry about being besieged by warships again.
At this time, the figure of little Tiga suddenly appeared on the deck. He was very happy to be upgraded.
He trotted to Kyle, stretched out his two short arms, and shouted excitedly,
Captain! Captain! I'm stronger again. Without waiting for Kyle to answer, little Tiga suddenly opened his arms excitedly. All of a sudden,
a violent airflow suddenly surged around the Tiga, and began to spin wildly around the hull of the Tiga. The calm sea surface suddenly became turbulent, and along the direction of the airflow, a tornado formed, rising straight into the sky.
The area within 500 meters around the Tiga instantly turned into a world of storm. Oh my god!
This scene is much more magnificent than the one when Nami attacked the Dragon Empire. Looking at the storm barrier reaching into the sky, Kyle laughed in surprise.
But this storm came quickly and went away quickly.
Almost as soon as the vortex reached a certain height, it instantly lost control, turned into falling water, and crashed down, hitting the temporary barrier created by Tiga.
Brilliant! Kyle praised little Tiga generously. The further upgrade of the Tiga gave him a big surprise. However, Kyle has not forgotten the main purpose of upgrading the Tiga.
Watching Dashigi and Kobe being led by little Tiga to visit the interior of the cabin, Kyle took the opportunity to open the interface of the training room. It takes 1 W Baileys to upgrade the ship's facilities from level 2 to level 500. However, to upgrade from level 2 to level 3, 2500 W Baileys are required, which is a 5-fold increase. If it weren't for ATMs like the Evil Dragon and Colonel Mouse, Kyle really didn't know how hard he would have to work to save so much money.
There is true love in the world. After joking in his heart, Kyle immediately moved his mind and upgraded the training room to level 3.
In the level 3 training room, not only has the efficiency of gaining experience increased to 200 points per hour, but the daily training time has also increased from 8 hours to 12 hours.
Finally, we can increase the exploitation of the tools. Kyle was overjoyed.
In this way, the training room can bring 2,400 experience points to Dashigi and others every day, which is directly doubled compared to level 2. The already sluggish upgrade speed can also be slightly improved. His thoughts moved. Kyle took out another 500 W Bailey and upgraded his captain's room to level 2. The recovery rate directly becomes 20% per hour.
But that didn't matter to Kyle. Sleeping is his attitude towards life, not for any purpose. Even if you can restore all your energy in 5 hours, you still have to sleep in, no one can help. After the upgrade, the speed of the Tiga has been further enhanced. It only took them 2 hours to reach the gate of the 16th Navy Branch base from the waters of the Dragon Empire. At this time, at the bow of the Tiga, Dashigi stood alone at the bow, looking at the naval base getting closer and closer, her bright eyes flashing constantly. The sea breeze blew on her face, and at this moment, she felt a little dazed. Before I knew it, it's been almost 2 months. Dashigi murmured softly.
Just 2 months ago, she was just a small naval sergeant who firmly believed in the justice of the Navy. But since joining the Dusk Pirates and meeting Captain Kyle, a special agent directly under the Navy Admiral, her trust in the Navy has fluctuated countless times.
Tyrannical Monka, rats colluding with pirates.
In just 2 sea areas not far from each other, there appeared 2 navies that violated the name of justice.
Dashigi couldn't imagine how many Navy officers were doing such treacherous things in the entire ocean. And during the daily chat, Dashiki also learned.
It turns out that in the Grand Line, there are also the Shichibukai who oppress the people with the support of the Navy, and the Celestial Dragons who play with the people under the protection of the Navy. All signs indicate that the Navy is not a perfect force of justice.
What is the Navy?
What is justice? At this time, Dashigi could no longer tell the difference.
But at least she knew one thing. Captain Kyle is not a good person. He is lazy and greedy.
He has powerful abilities but is unwilling to take on more responsibilities. He always takes out some strange clothes and asks me to wear them for him to see.
But
Dashigi, who followed Kyle, did see the townspeople of Wooltown using the weapons they bought from them to defeat the invading pirates. I saw the liberation of Shields Town from the tyranny of Monka. After seeing the smiles on the faces of the people in Kokowani's village after the Arlong pirates were annihilated.
Justice?
Maybe these two words had no meaning from the beginning. At this moment, Dashigi just wanted to follow her captain and witness more smiling faces.
The girl's eyes suddenly brightened.
He stretched out his hands, palms facing the gate of the naval base.
Oh Lord!
The mask of flesh and blood, the myriad things, the one who spreads his wings and flies high, the one who bears the name of man. The wall of blue fire is engraved with twin lotuses, and the distant sky awaits the abyss of fire.
The 73rd breakthrough, twin lotus blue fire falling. Chapter 49, The Green Algae Head. Boom!
Two red flame beams formed by powerful spiritual power suddenly flew out from Tashiji's palms and hit the gate of the naval base directly. The blazing flame suddenly exploded with unparalleled impact, sweeping across the gate of the entire naval base.
In an instant, the originally closed naval base instantly turned into an open sea paradise.
The spiritual flame was burning strangely above the sea. The firelight made Tashiji's pretty face red.
She waved gently. Tiga, please drive the boat in. Okay. Little Tiga grinned.
The huge ship rushed straight into the 16th Naval Branch like a giant dragon.
At this time,
a group of Navy members from 16 branches were still in a state of shock, not understanding what was happening at all. Until they saw the Tiga emerging from the sea of fire and the pirate flag flying on it.
Only then did they realize that something was seriously wrong. Enemy attack. It's an enemy attack. Hurry up and ring the bell. Pirates have invaded the naval base. Hold your weapons. Everyone be on guard.
The peaceful naval base suddenly became chaotic.
However, the moment they saw the Tiga, it meant the end of everything.
In the panic, a nimble figure suddenly leaped out from the Tiga. With the experience of causing trouble in the G153 branch last time, Dashigi can be said to be familiar with the process this time. What's more, her strength has become much stronger than last time. At this moment, the beautiful and smart girl danced like a butterfly, and her body turned into a phantom and passed by one Navy figure after another. Wherever he passed, all the Navy fell to the ground and became unconscious. In less than half an hour, the entire square of the 16th branch base was filled with the bodies of Navy soldiers. One by one, their weapons fell out of their hands and they fell to the ground unconscious.
From a distance, they looked like they were dead.
All the Navy soldiers who were still standing were shaking in panic. Even though they were holding weapons that could easily take someone's life, they were unable to give them any sense of security.
At the same time, naval base building.
The ugly-looking rat's whiskers trembled as it frantically dialed for help to other naval bases while looking out the window in fear.
At this time, page 54.
One of his trusted followers suddenly shouted in a trembling voice.
No, 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 this is bad. Colonel, that woman, she entered the building. What?
The panicked mouse colonel's face suddenly trembled, and then he threw the den mushi to the ground.
Damn it! These damn bastards. They are usually so quick to collect money, but now not even one of them answers the phone.
The thought flashed through Colonel Mouse's mind, and he gritted his teeth and took out his exclusive den mushi that he used to communicate with the evil dragon. Although he might be in danger of losing his job if people knew that he was in contact with pirates, it was better than losing his life. The mouse had already recognized the pirate flag outside. That's the flag of the Dusk Pirates. The captain of this pirate group is Kyle, the pirate with the highest bounty in the East China Sea today. Even that bastard evil dragon only has 2,000 million Baileys.
How much of a bastard can Kyle be when his bounty is higher than that of the bastard dragon? I can't even imagine how much of a bastard rat is. Given the speed at which the merfolk travel in the ocean, if they could come, he would at least have a chance to save his life. However, when Colonel Mouse tried to make a few calls, he was shocked to find that this special den mushy, which is usually looked after by the fishmen, cannot be connected at this time no matter how hard you try. Damn it! Unreliable pirates! The mouse cursed loudly. At this moment, a painful wailing sound was heard from outside his office door. The closer the Navy was to Rat's office, the more they knew about what Rat was doing. So after entering the building, Dashigi was not polite at all. She did not hold back when dealing with these hypocritical Navy officers. Without taking their lives, Dashigi directly used the sharp blade of her Zanpakutō to kill them. Inside the base building, screams were heard one after another. Bang! Under Mouse's trembling gaze, a seemingly delicate and quiet girl with a knife suddenly broke into his office. If I hadn't seen the girl's heroic deeds downstairs, and the blood on her body, the mouse might really have thought of her as an excellent student in some college, and came to play games with him after class. But now it seems that this is obviously not the case. I finally caught you, Mouse. Holding a long knife stained with blood, Dashigi walked into the office. Every time she took a step forward, the mouse felt a sudden tremor in his heart. You, what are you going to do? The rat hiding behind several trusted men trembled, but in order to survive, he still struggled and yelled. Are you not afraid that the entire East China Sea Navy will come after you by attacking the naval branch? Don't think that a pirate with a bounty of 3,000 million Baileys can do whatever he wants. You dare mention the Navy. Hearing that the rat dared to raise the Navy's flag, Dashigi suddenly became furious. The sharp blade in his hand did not give Colonel Mouse any chance to react. It struck him on the forehead suddenly as if by teleportation. All of a sudden, Colonel Mouse's eyes turned white and he fainted. Humph! Dashigi snorted in frustration. If Captain Kyle hadn't said that Mouse should have a lot of evidence of corruption in the East China Sea Navy, she really wanted to chop off his head with a knife. After sheathing her Zanpakutō, Dashigi suddenly turned her gaze towards the two Marines under Colonel Mouse, and said, You two, go carry him to the Tiga outside. Then, Dashigi paused suddenly, as if she was a little uncomfortable. But thinking of Kyle's diligent teachings to her, she still gritted her teeth and said, Then, move all the valuables in this building onto the boat. You guys were robbed. Facts have proven that people who hang out with trash won't be good people either. Under the threat of Dashigi's eyes, the two rats' confidants took action immediately without any hesitation. In order to leave a good impression on Dashigi, the two of them even flatteredly dug out the safe hidden deep underground in the naval base, and then transported it to the Tiga without hesitation. As some of the sailors who were not seriously injured gradually regained consciousness, more and more people joined the relocation movement. So much so that none of them noticed a small drifting sailboat slowly approaching the naval base. What? Zoro stood on top of the boat, holding two bloody packages in his hands, with a look of curiosity on his face. What is going on at this 85th Branch Naval Base that is so busy? Chapter 50. Have you heard of my story? With curiosity in his heart, Zoro immediately drew out the long sword from his waist, slashed quickly on both sides of the boat twice, and approached the port. And just then, a cute little head popped out from the railing of the Tiga. What? Little Tiga looked at Zoro and shouted in a soft voice out of curiosity. Hey, what are you doing here? What? Zoro was startled when he heard the voice, then he slowly raised his head and looked above his head. Only then did he realize that what was next to him was not a harbor wall, but a huge warship. More than 10 meters above him, a little child was lying on the railing of the boat, waving at him. Strange, why are there still children in the naval base? Is there no one to supervise them? Because of the perspective problem, Zoro did not notice the pirate flag flying above the Tiga. He murmured in his heart, and then shouted loudly to little Tiga. Hey! Are you from the Navy? Navy? Tiga tilted his head cutely. I'm not from the Navy. What do you want from the Navy?
Considering that it might not be good to show a bloody head to a child, Zoro deliberately turned sideways to cover the 2 packages on his waist, and then said, "I'm a bounty hunter. I'm here to exchange for bounties." "Bounty hunter?" Little Tiga continued to tilt his head and muttered softly. "The bounty hunter seems to be Captain Kyle's enemy?" "No. I have to report to Captain Kyle." Swish it. Little Tiga's figure suddenly disappeared. Scare. Zoro was startled, his eyes widened, and he looked around, but he couldn't find where little Tiga had gone. Strange kid. After muttering something, Zoro continued to row with the knife in hand and arrived inside the naval base. At this time, Dashigi was standing at the gate of the base, supervising the Navy's transportation of supplies. Kobe was also quietly holding a small notebook, recording every batch of supplies looted from the naval base. If you don't remember it, you won't know how scary it is. In just one naval base in the East China Sea, they actually looted a full 10 billion in Bailey cash. And this is not even the main part of this naval base. From Colonel Mouse's private treasure house, they even found various valuable treasures that were also worth 10 billion Baileys. This is not to mention the money that the rats have used to squander, to bribe their superiors, and to win people's hearts over the years. If we really calculate it in detail, it will definitely be a shocking astronomical figure. The entire sea area, more than 20 villages, and nearly 1,000 people all became slaves of Colonel Mouse and the Arlong pirates, using all their income and assets in exchange for a chance to survive. Dashigi, who was guarding the door, clenched his hands tightly as he looked at the boxes of cash and treasures. At this moment, she really wanted to resurrect the evil dragon that had been killed by Nami, and then cut it into pieces, so that he would be in agony forever. I wish I could pick up a knife immediately, chop off the mouse colonel's limbs, and hang him high in the air, letting the scorching sun burn his sinful body. Unfortunately, Captain Kyle once said that a living rat is more valuable than a dead one. Dashigi believes in her captain and will definitely not let Colonel Rat off easily. Compared to Dashigi, who absolutely trusts Kyle, Kobe, who has not yet had the character template loaded, has more intense inner fluctuations. He could never imagine that the Navy he had always dreamed of becoming would be like this. The boy quickly recorded the valuable materials in the notebook, and his heart trembled violently every time he wrote a word. At this moment, Zoro suddenly walked over carrying 2 heads. Seeing Dashigi's back, he subconsciously thought that Dashigi was the commander of this naval base. Zoro stepped forward. "Excuse me." Suddenly, his voice stopped. Zoro widened his eyes, looking at the girl looking back in front of him in disbelief, and even his body stiffened instantly. You. He stretched out his hand, pointed at Dashigi, and stuttered for a long time but couldn't say a word. "Okay?" Dashigi frowned slightly, stretched out her hand to tuck her hair behind her ears, and asked. Page 55. "What? Is something wrong?" Zoro suddenly fell silent. Seeing Tashigi's cold and arrogant temperament, he knew that this was not his former best friend. If Kuina is still alive. After taking a deep breath, Zoro pulled himself out of his memories. He reached out and picked up the 2 bags. "Hello, I'm a bounty hunter. Am I here to exchange for bounty?" A bounty hunter with a famous sword. Dashigi's eyes narrowed, and her gaze towards Zoro suddenly became serious. Because she had already discovered the big sword at Zoro's waist, Wado Ikemanji. The swordsman who can wield this famous sword must be very powerful. Considering that the other party was also doing a disguised way to eliminate harm for the people, Dashigi hesitated for a moment, and then said, "I'm sorry, the 16th branch base has important matters to deal with today and is temporarily closed to the public. You can sail west and redeem your bounty at branch 17. She didn't want Zoro to stay here for too long. After all, pirates and bounty hunters are inherently hostile to each other. What's more, Captain Kyle is a pirate with a high bounty. If possible, Dashigi didn't want to have any conflict with Zoro. However, Zoro's next words made her silent instantly. Branch number 16. Isn't this branch number 85? Zoro blinked in shock. That expression was as if he had heard some incredible news. Dashigi fell silent suddenly, but a look of looking at a fool gradually appeared in her eyes. After a while, she sighed softly and said helplessly, "Navy Branch number 85 is in the southwest of the East China Sea, and this is the northeast of the East China Sea. The two bases are far apart. How did you find this place?" After a pause of 1 second, Dashigi couldn't help but add, "Could it be that you are a directionally challenged person?" What words? What words are this? Zoro was furious and trembling with shame. Embarrassed, he turned around and walked away. "Since your place is closed, I'll go somewhere else." Damn, it's so embarrassing. Can this guy really find the next naval base alive? Looking at Zoro's back, a trace of worry suddenly flashed into Shiji's eyes. But at this moment, her eyes suddenly froze again. Suddenly, a figure jumped down from the Tiga and stood steadily behind Zoro. "Please wait a moment, Mr. Roronoa Zoro." Tread. Zoro's steps suddenly paused, and he turned around again, looking at the man who could actually call out his full name. Zoro frowned. "Do we know each other?" "That's not the case." Kyle laughed and said immediately, "But your head is full of your story." Chapter 51. The Taoist Heart Collapses. Zoro? For some reason, Zoro felt offended. But before he could figure out the meaning of Kyle's words, Kyle took a step forward and said with a smile, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Kyle, the captain of the Dusk Pirates." Pirates? Zoro's eyes suddenly flashed. He raised his head sharply and looked at Kyle curiously. Next second. Swish. Wenya's long sword and Deo Yamanji were suddenly unsheathed. "If you know me, then you should know that I am a bounty hunter." Zoro's eyes gleamed with evil. At this moment, he also recognized Kyle's identity. The pirate with the highest bounty in the East China Sea, Kyle. "Ah, don't be so nervous. We are not enemies." Facing the murderous aura slowly rising from Zoro, Kyle remained calm. He even took the initiative to step forward, put his hand on Zoro's hand, and pushed his unsheathed sword back into place. "I heard that you went out to sea to find a stronger swordsman to practice your swordsmanship. This is a rare opportunity. Why not have a fight here?" "Compete? With you?" Zoro frowned, somewhat confused about Kyle's intention. But Kyle shook his head gently and said with a smile, "Of course not me. I'm not a swordsman." As he spoke, he glanced back. "Dashigi, stop being busy and come and learn sword skills from our great swordsman." "Okay." Although it was unclear what Captain Kyle's purpose was, Dashigi still obeyed the order and walked over with a sword. The fighting spirit in his eyes instantly rose. "Dusk Pirates, Dashigi. Please teach me." Swish. The icy Zanpakutō was suddenly unsheathed, and the sharp blade emitted a chilling aura under the sunlight. Zoro frowned instantly. The swordsman's intuition made him realize that the person in front of him was definitely not someone to be trifled with. He glanced at Kyle, but also couldn't tell what he was trying to do. But fighting against a powerful swordsman was indeed what he was looking forward to. "Roronoa Zoro. Please teach me." He instantly drew out 3 knives and took up position, without any intention of looking down on Dashigi just because she was a woman. After all, several years ago, he was defeated by a female swordsman more than 2,000 times in a row. A strong desire to fight suddenly burst out. But at this moment, Kyle on the side suddenly said, "Dashigi, just use the sword technique, no need to use the ghost technique." "Okay." Dashigi nodded slightly and agreed. Zoro frowned again. "Ghost Road? What is that? Is it the name of a sword technique?" Although he didn't know what Ghost Way was, he knew very well that Kyle was asking this female swordsman to hide her strength. Am I being underestimated?" Zoro snorted in his heart. If you dare to underestimate him, then prepare to be shocked. Even though Zoro has never said it, in his mind, he is the strongest swordsman in the East China Sea. In the future, he will definitely be the strongest swordsman in the world. Tread. Zoro stepped hard and instantly turned into a ferocious beast rushing down the mountain, attacking Dashigi fiercely.
Santoryu Ghost Slayer. Clang! A crisp and loud sound of metal collision suddenly resounded throughout the naval base. All of a sudden, time seemed to have stood still.
Zoro, who had already arrived behind Dashigi, opened his eyes wide and his pupils trembled, as if he had experienced something incredible. Dashigi let out a long breath, performed a beautiful sword flower, and then slowly put her Zanpakutō back into the sheath.
Jean Shiyu.
She confided softly. The spiritual energy surrounding his body suddenly dissipated.
And just then, click, click. A clear cracking sound suddenly rang out.
The two ordinary knives in Zoro's hands suddenly broke and fell to the ground the moment Dashigi finished speaking. Only the shocked Zoro was left standing there in a daze, unable to recover for a long time.
He was defeated by the female swordsman once again.
And it was a female swordsman who looked so much like her.
For a moment, Zoro didn't know what mood he should be in.
Seeing this scene, Kyle was not surprised at all.
Page 56.
Although Dashigi's character template is based on spiritual power as the main strength, but with enough levels accumulated, even if she abandons the application of ghost arts. Just based on the strengthening of the body by spiritual power, his strength is at least at the level of an 8,000 million pirate.
It is equivalent to the level of MR.1 in Crocodile. Now there is still less than a year before Luffy officially sets out to sea. Zoro's current strength is not even as strong as when he first appeared, so how can he fight against Dashigi at this moment? However, if I were to give in just because my opponent was too strong, he would not be the legendary Zoro. Tread!
Zoro suddenly turned around, took out the Wado Ikamanji from his mouth, and clenched his hands.
He grinned and said, "Hey! Why are you putting away your knife? The battle between us is not over yet. But you've already lost. If I hadn't held back just now, you would be dead now." Dashigi frowned, unwilling to fight Zoro anymore. Zoro's current strength is at most a pirate with about 3,000 million Baileys. Maybe even a bit of an exaggeration for him.
Instead of sparring with him, she might as well wait for Monka to return. At least when she was attacking Monk, she didn't have to worry about how to control her strength.
Anyway, that big guy is a monster and he won't get hurt no matter how hard you chop him.
Dashigi ignored Zoro and turned her gaze towards Kyle, ready to obey his orders. But what she didn't expect was that Kyle actually smiled and nodded, saying,
"Since the other party wants to continue fighting, then we should not spoil their fun. But this time, you can use the ghost way." "What?"
Hearing this, Dashiki was suddenly stunned. But Kyle had already turned his head to look at Zoro and asked,
"How is it, Mr. Zoro? Is it okay to let Dashigi use his full strength?"
"Of course,"
Zoro answered without hesitation.
Although he had just lost the fight, Zoro clearly felt that his swordsmanship had improved slightly. He felt that as long as he continued to fight with the woman in front of him, his understanding of the way of the sword would definitely make a qualitative leap.
Use ghost arts?
After seeing the smirk on Kyle's face, Dashigi seemed to understand something.
"Captain, do you want me to give the other party a good blow?"
"Don't show your full strength first, let the opponent think that you still have the strength to fight, and then use overwhelming force to inflict a heavy blow to the opponent's heart.
For a proud swordsman, this is a fatal blow to the heart of Kendo.
It's not an exaggeration to say that this is a murderous act." For a moment, when Dashigi looked at Zoro again, there was a hint of sympathy in her eyes.
"I really don't know how this green algae-headed guy offended Captain Kyle and let the captain treat him like this." Dashigi quickly obeyed. Without waiting for Zoro to react, she suddenly began to gather all the spiritual power in her body and transported it to the Zanpakutō blade. Among the Kido, there is also a powerful Heido that can be used with a Zanpakutō. For example, this move. The 78th Path of Destruction, Cutting the Flower Wheel. Chapter 52, Conquering Sauron.
A mighty spiritual pressure filled with a destructive aura surged around Tashigi's body and condensed on her Zanpakutō, forming a huge golden slash. The next second, the world seemed to be split into two, with light flickering clearly, and the light was bright and dazzling. Dashigi raised her head, her face silent, and whispered softly with a hint of apology. I'm sorry, but this is your own request.
Since you want me to go all out, I hope you can survive the next attack. At this moment, Dashiki's gaze dominated the world.
This was the first time in her life that she had heard such an outrageous request. In an instant, the condensed spiritual power suddenly leaped out, broke through the void, and slashed towards Zoro with unparalleled force.
What? What is this?
Looking at the flying slash in front of him, Zoro's pupils suddenly dilated. The dazzling red gold was rapidly magnified in his sight, and then occupied his entire world.
Zoro didn't have time to think, and quickly sheathed the Wado Ikemanji.
The muscles all over his body swelled instantly, and he swelled up a lot.
Itaryu Iai Shishij. Pang. A fierce slash appeared in the air. Clang.
The crisp sound of metal collision appeared again. At this moment, Kyle, who was watching the game, brightened up. On the battlefield, the huge and mighty slash was actually blocked by Zoro's sword at this moment and frozen in place. A trace of surprise suddenly flashed across Dashiki's eyes, and she sighed inwardly.
Could it be possible that the guy opposite me can really block my full-strength attack?
But before Dashigi could come to her senses, she saw a stream of scarlet blood suddenly flow out from the corner of Zoro's mouth. Under the pressure of the spiritual pressure slash, even though he burst out all his strength, he was still unable to breathe.
The resistance lasted only a few seconds before he couldn't help but spit out a large mouthful of blood. What?
Zoro screamed as the huge impact instantly knocked him away, and he slammed into the wall behind him like a cannonball. The slash filled with spiritual energy continued to be powerful as it rushed out straight ahead, blasting a huge hole in the wall of the naval base.
Gudong.
Inside the base, a group of Navy officers who were transporting supplies suddenly widened their eyes and looked at what they saw in disbelief.
To know.
The walls of the naval base were built before Colonel Mouse came to power, and no corners were cut. Even if more than a dozen cannons bombarded the wall at the same time, it would take at least an hour, plus the support of countless shells, before it could be broken.
This little pirate girl is really a monster.
If they, as mortals, were hit by something like this, their souls would have already run away to who knows where in the underworld to take a bath. For a moment, the sailors were filled with emotion.
Thank you for not killing me before.
Thinking of this, they couldn't help but speed up their pace in moving the supplies to repay Dashigi's kindness.
Well, I really have figured out how to use self-PUA. The other side.
Dashigi released a little spiritual pressure, and after sensing with her immature observation haki, she immediately reported to Kyle. Captain Kyle, that guy seems to have fainted due to excessive exhaustion.
Oh? Kyle smiled crookedly. I never expected that the future Zoro would be so miserable before he met Luffy. But it's true that Zoro, who was able to be played around by Barumaba at the beginning of the story, was not yet worthy of the title of the future Zoro, either in terms of strength or mentality. It doesn't matter.
As long as he gets on my pirate ship, even if he is a nobody, I have the confidence to make him a powerful general who roams the seas.
Kyle teased inwardly. With a flash of thought, he suddenly ordered Kobe.
Kirby, go dig that guy out and take him to the crew quarters. From the first moment he saw Zoro, Kyle had no intention of letting him go. A super genius who can grow from an ordinary swordsman to the world's top swordsman in just 3 years. Even without loading the character template, his value is already equivalent to an A-level character card.
How could Kyle, who was in a shortage of staff, let go of such a talent? Dashiki, I'll leave this to you.
I'll go back and interrogate Colonel Mouse.
Kyle turned his head, licked his lips quietly, and said goodbye to Dashigi. Thank you for your hard work, Captain Kyle. Dashigi's expression suddenly changed and he said seriously. Just serving the people.
Kyle waved and smiled, then jumped up again and returned to the Tiga with Kobe who was carrying Zoro.
Have to say.
Although Tsukuyami is only an A-level skill, it really brings Kyle unexpected surprises time and time again.
After destroying people's will and reshaping their personality, Kyle discovered another use for Tsukuyami. The best place for interrogation. In a dark world.
Colonel Mouse slowly woke up from a simple cross. He trembled and slowly opened his eyes. Looking around, all you can see is a bloody land filled with broken bones.
Where is this? The mouse said blankly.
He tried to move his limbs, but found that his hands and feet were tied to the cross.
Page 57. What happened? The mouse panicked instantly.
But the next second, the space in front of him suddenly twisted. In the twisted vortex, a man's figure magically appeared. It was Kyle, who returned to the Tsukuyomi space. Seeing the awakened mouse, Kai immediately smiled kindly.
Okay, I've finished the things outside. Next, we can continue. It's you!
When the mouse saw Kyle's figure, its narrow eyes suddenly widened so wide that they seemed to be about to fall out.
All of a sudden,
a large amount of painful memories began to erode the mouse's memory, causing him to let out a violent scream.
What? No! No! Don't come over here!
Kyle hadn't done anything yet, but he looked as if he had been tortured by all 10 tortures of the Qing dynasty. Kyle heard the mouse's scream, but he just chuckled. The next second, his voice seemed to appear directly in the mouse's heart, and he whispered, "Don't worry, as long as you confess the crimes you have committed over the years and those who have been in cahoots with you in other naval bases, I will try my best to make your death as painless as possible." Clearly, those were devilish remarks, but for some reason, at that moment the mouse seemed to have seen an angel from the divine realm, with hope shining in his eyes.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything.
Colonel Hot-Headed of the 52nd Branch Base in the East China Sea secretly kept a group of pirates and constantly harassed the residents of the local waters. Then he personally came out to deal with the pirates and refresh his political achievements.
That's how he got the position of base commander.
Major Bai Deng from the 28th Branch Base was originally a retired pirate. Later, he took a lot of assets and became a naval officer through my introduction.
He is ready to spend his old age in the naval base. Lieutenant Colonel Peroxy from the 39th Branch Base was originally in a brothel.
Later, because of her extraordinary prostitution skills and the fact that she took good care of me and several other colonels, we jointly recommended her to become a Marine, and then she will take turns to serve us at various bases.
Driver Sawarin of the 105th Branch Base. Chapter 53 Sword. Slow down, slow down.
After hearing Colonel Mouse recount all the glorious deeds he knew about, Kyle quickly stopped him and asked him to slow down.
In the real world, in the prison of the Tiga. Kyle patted Kirby's shoulder gently, rubbing it firmly to ease his shaking body. That's reality, Kirby. Reality is so cruel and dark. This is not a problem of a certain person or a certain force. This is the way the world is, you have to accept it. But Kyle suddenly smiled. Being able to keep hope in your eyes and light up the light in your heart in such a dark world makes people feel even greater. Stick to your ideas and work hard for them unwaveringly, and time will be the best answer. After stroking Kobe's pink hair, Kyle's eyes suddenly turned fierce, and he looked at the mouse and said, "Continue." The other side of the steel fence. The mouse stood quietly in the empty dungeon. His eyes were occupied by a pair of blood-red Magatama pupils, and his body was covered with various scars. After hearing Kyle's order, he began to continue speaking. After half an hour, with a cold look in his eyes, Kobe dragged a corpse that had already bled dry and threw it directly into the sea along the side of the Tiga. And in the captain's room, Kyle stood tall behind his desk. On the desk, there is a video telephone bug that was stolen from the naval base. The eyes of the Den Den Mushi emitted 2 beams of light, and the figure of Marshal Sengoku appeared on the opposite wall. Kyle looked serious and reported to the videophone Mushi in front of him according to Kobe's notes. The above are all the clues I got from Colonel Mouse. Boom. Okay. In the video, Marshal Zhangguo suddenly punched his desk and broke it into 2 pieces. A cruel sneer suddenly appeared on his kind and majestic face. I didn't expect that such a small East China Sea could hide so much filth. Is it because the headquarters' attention has been distracted too much by the new world that some of them have become complacent? Zhangguo's eyes were spitting fire, but soon, a look of approval appeared in his eyes again. He looked at Kyle. Kyle, you did a great job this time. You are worthy of being Kizaru's nephew. Your information helped me a lot. Tell me what reward you want. Even if it's the animal-type devil fruit, I can give it to you in advance. What are you talking about, Marshal? These are my duties. I am not working hard for rewards. Only.
Kyle's eyes sparkled, and he smiled at Den Mushi.
Forget about the reward of the devil fruit.
In fact, we have already found clues about the black cat Kuro in the base of the 16th branch. I believe that it won't be long before the devil fruit will appear in my possession.
Ha ha. Good boy.
Zhangguo was stunned, and then he laughed along with Kyle. I didn't expect you to have a trick up your sleeve.
It doesn't matter. Young man, just go for it boldly. I believe in your ability.
For Kyle, a legitimate agent, Zhangguo gave him trust far beyond that of an ordinary navy. He didn't even verify the authenticity of Kyle's report and just chose to believe it. Apart from the fact that this information is indeed easy to distinguish the authenticity, it is also enough to illustrate Sengoku's attitude towards Kyle.
I can only say that Kizaru really has a good nephew. After laughing, Zhangguo once again said to Kyle.
Okay, Kyle. You don't need to beat around the bush here.
Just tell me what reward you want. In that case.
Kyle pretended to consider, and after a moment, he slowly said.
Why don't you equip me with a few more reliable subordinates, Marshal? You know, although there are many people in the vast ocean, there are too few people I can trust.
Why not let the Marshal personally select a group of unknown Navy officers to fill my special forces?
Kyle chuckled.
It's not a lie that there is a shortage of staff. Even though they have the ship Spirit Tiga, the Dusk Pirates do not need to devote too much energy to dealing with chores such as operating the ship. But seeing the large amount of Baileys coming in, Kyle believed that with the good luck he had gained along the way, he would be able to obtain a large number of character cards soon. Now, he already has 2 character cards ready to be used.
Naturally, the earlier you use character cards, the greater the benefits you will get.
By chance, Kyle was surprised to find that the compatibility of character cards is not always the same. Because he saw with his own eyes that Kobe, who originally had only 20% compatibility with Zabuza Momochi, increased his compatibility to 23% after a long period of training. Although this did not change the result, it undoubtedly allowed Kyle to discover new rules of the system. That is the strength of the partner, which will also be one of the important factors affecting the compatibility of the character card. But in the East China Sea, there are very few guys who can be called powerful. Luffy, the child of destiny, is one of them, but it is impossible for him to join someone else's pirate group.
Sanji, who has a hidden talent, is indeed not bad. But like Luffy, without the halo of the protagonist and the influence of a specific plot, he really couldn't think of a way that would make him sincerely leave the sea restaurant and join the pirate group. So he thought of asking the Navy for help. Anyway, in the eyes of the Navy, he is not a real pirate. Recruiting a few potential guys to become pirates will not have much impact on the Navy. What's more, who can blame him for having the relationship with his second uncle? This should not be a difficult task for the Warring States period. However, what Kyle didn't expect was. After he finished speaking, Marshal Zhangguo suddenly fell into deep thought. That's it. He tapped the table lightly, not knowing what he was thinking about, which made Kyle look a little confused. After a while, Zhangguo suddenly stretched out the finger that was tapping the table, slapped the table, and said suddenly. Decided. Kyle. Yes. Kyle straightened up and answered seriously. Zhangguo stroked his mustache and said immediately. Kyle, your performance in recent times is indeed somewhat beyond my expectations. Originally, I was still hesitating whether to implement this plan. But since you've already brought it up, I'll just go with the flow. Zhangguo's expression suddenly became serious. In fact, a long time ago, the top brass of the Navy had secretly trained a group of geniuses who rarely participated in official naval activities. I plan to set up a secret special force in the Navy. The name of this unit is Sword, which means the Sword of the Navy. And the Sword's mission is to monitor the activities of all large pirate forces, including the 4 emperors and the 7 warlords of the sea.
In an emergency, the sword team has the right to directly attack any force, including but not limited to the four emperors, the navy, and even the world government.
There is no need to report to me.
At this point, Zhangguo's voice paused noticeably.
Page 58. Obviously he knew what he had just said.
After a pause, seeing that Kyle's face showed no change, he continued. This is undoubtedly a very difficult and dangerous mission.
But Kyle, your abilities and talents allow me to see this secret and special future.
Although you don't have a naval rank, from this moment on, you will be the captain of this secret special force.
You will have full control over this force.
All of your subordinates will automatically become members of the sword. Later, I will send some qualified prospective members to the East China Sea to join your pirate group and act with you.
When you feel the time is right, you can set off directly to the Grand Line to carry out the sword team's real mission. Help the Navy, help me, regulate the world. Chapter 54 Dog Food Card? Sword.
Kyle licked his dry lips, his eyes shining with excitement.
He had some impression of the name, but not much.
He remembered that this was supposed to be another spy of the Navy, the special force where Drake belonged. 3 years later, Drake, who was undercover in Kaido's pirate group, was the captain of the sword team. Unexpectedly, this title now falls on me.
But with the title of sword captain, my future actions will be much easier.
In a sense, he is the Jinui of the warring states marshal, and has absolute autonomy to act independently.
It is not a problem to execute first and report later.
Kyle fixed his eyes, and immediately answered Den Den Mushi.
Please rest assured, Marshal. I promise to complete the mission. Zhangguo nodded with satisfaction. Well, I believe in your ability. After a few pleasantries, Kyle hung up the phone.
He knew that after receiving what he had reported, it would not be long before a huge earthquake would erupt in the East China Sea. I just don't know whether this earthquake is a good thing or a bad thing for the people of the East China Sea.
But no matter what, he really made a lot of money today.
There was still 1.7 million Bailey left from the Arlong pirates that he had looted this morning. In just a short moment, another huge sum of 10 billion Baileys was earned. Otherwise, why did people in the past say that corrupt officials were deliberately nurtured? The benefits of thoroughly investigating corrupt officials would be far greater than those of working hard all over the world for business. With a thoughtful look in his eyes, Kyle suddenly opened the system in his mind. The miscellaneous matters have been dealt with, and now it's time for the exciting lottery draw. At this time, Kyle's safe contained a total of 11.7 billion Baileys in cash. He decided to keep 7,000 million Baileys for the daily consumption of the pirate group.
The remaining 11 billion Baileys will all be used to draw capsule toys he has designed.
1 million belly can be used to draw ordinary capsule toys, and you can draw 100 rounds.
5 million belly can be used to draw premium gacha, and you can draw 50 times. The remaining 5 million Baileys will be used to draw legendary gachas.
According to the previous rule that the first lottery draw always yields good stuff, Kyle believes that the first legendary lottery in his life will definitely bring him new surprises. As soon as his thoughts moved, he directly opened the Gasopan interface, and then quickly clicked on the 10-pull button of the ordinary Gasopan machine with ease. No more, no less, exactly 10 times. In an instant, the system prompt message flashed wildly before Kyle's eyes like a phantom.
It seems like the harvest is pretty good.
Although I didn't have time to see clearly what rewards I got, but among the information bars that just flashed by, the green and blue information bars accounted for at least 3%.
With a thought, Kyle opened the system backpack.
Passing over the patches of white E-level props, he soon found the real prize of this lottery.
First up, old friends. Experience book? Explosive talisman? Sun blade? Is there nothing new in this D-level prize pool? Kyle complained slightly in his mind.
The first two are easy to deal with, but the main thing is the Sunblade.
If you say it's okay, its quality is not as good as a good sword. If you say it's not okay, it's a weapon item produced by the system. After equipping your partner, it can increase his qualifications by 20 points.
I don't know whether I made a profit or a loss by using 100W Bailey to draw such a fragile partner equipment. But soon, Kyle stopped looking at the Sunblade, which he already had more than a dozen of. Because in addition to these common props, these 100 consecutive draws also gave Kyle 2 C-level large experience books and a C-level weapon.
And 2 D-level character cards. Character card, Demon Slayer Core Member. Character card, Ordinary Death God. These 2 character cards are different from any character cards Kyle has opened before. Not only is there no specific name, there is not even a clear face. The overall look is like a young man wearing the Demon Slayer Core uniform and the Shinigami costume, standing far away, sideways. Is this a dog food card? Seeing these 2 character cards, Kyle immediately thought of the useless cards used to increase the experience of the main team characters in the game of his previous life. However, the system after the time travel obviously no longer has this function. Of course, even if there was, Kyle wouldn't be willing to give it up. This is a very valuable character card, and an important item that can increase the number of tool people around you. Each one is invaluable. After putting away the 2 character cards, Kyle didn't look at the C-level shallow hit again. Nowadays, except for character cards, items below level B can no longer surprise him. What's more, these 100 consecutive draws are just a test. Next comes the real big part. After taking a deep breath, Kyle followed the old rules and prayed to every god name he could remember. Then he silently said in his heart, "System Dad, please give me strength. Premium Gasopon Machine, 50 consecutive draws, go ahead." Dang 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 dang. Kyle's consciousness instantly clicked the 10-draw button of the high-quality Gasopon machine 5 times in a row. All of a sudden, the colorful information bar was refreshing frantically in his mind. Kyle grinned and quickly opened the backpack system to check his prize from the lottery. In addition to most of the guaranteed D-level items, this 50 consecutive draws brought Kyle a total of 5 C-level items, 2 B-level items and 1 A-level item. Nothing S. Looking at the backpack without any golden blow, Kyle felt a little disappointed. Sure enough, the last 10 consecutive draws gave an S-level item. Is it because of the first deposit discount? After sighing, Kyle stopped thinking too much and began to check his gains one by one. First, there are 2 character cards, 1 B and 1 C. I have to say that the premium Gasopon machine is worthy of being a premium product. This time, the system actually gave out 2 character cards with touching illustrations. One photo shows the insect queen with a voluptuous figure, bright red lips, and all the parts of her body exposed except for the parts that cannot be exposed. B-level, character card, Mosquito Girl. The other one is a legal Lolita with long pink ponytails, wearing conservative underwear, but showing her round breasts to the audience without reservation. C-level, character card, Main. Sha. Kyle sniffed calmly, his eyes scanning the 2 rich and generous portraits carefully, not missing any details. 1 B grade, 1 C grade. If future high-quality capsule machines have this rate of delivery, it would be acceptable. However, one of these 2 is a weirdo from One Punch Man, and the other is a sniper from the healing anime Akame Killer. It seems that it is a bit difficult to find compatible people for them. Kyle thought for a long time but couldn't think of any suitable candidate, so he decided to ignore it for the time being. He turned his gaze and looked at the remaining props again. First, there is only 1 A-level item. It wasn't a strange face either, but an awakening stone that Kyle already had. As long as there is 1 more, he can give Dashigi the first awakening. The remaining B-level item is also a weapon that can be matched with the character Kamine. Imperial Weapon Romantic Turret. Chapter 55 Gold Saint. Imperial Weapon Romantic Turret. Category, Weapons. Grade, B. Introduction, a gun-shaped weapon from the world of Akame Killer, made from materials from legendary super dangerous species and rare metals. The user's spiritual energy can be converted into a powerful shock wave. The more crisis the user is in, the more powerful the shock wave will be. The most powerful secret, remove all restrictions on the romantic turret, greatly increase the power of the weapon, and after using it, the romantic turret will be temporarily unusable due to overheating of the device. Taigu. Romantic turret. Looking at the information about the romantic fort, Kyle's eyebrows suddenly raised. And his sight slowly shifted to the person he had just admired, Kamine. Needless to say, this imperial weapon is obviously meant to be used with mine. Page 59. After all, in the world of Arcane Killer, the romantic turret was originally her destined weapon. However, the weapon's aptitude is actually one level higher than the character card. This outrageous combination did make Kyle feel a little strange. But no matter what, the only person who matches the romantic fort best is Marn. A little lowly using a gun. I guess I need to be more careful next time. Looking at the character portrait of Marin, Kai started to think. Compared to Maine, who was still considered a human, Mosquito Girl's character card made him feel even more difficult. The only thing Kyle can think of at the moment is to find a woman who has eaten the bug fruit, who should be able to match up with Mosquito Girl. Or, looking at the almost crazy and perverted smile on the Mosquito Girl's portrait, Kyle's heart suddenly became restless, as if some special hobby was about to awaken. Kyle shuddered suddenly and silently turned off the illustration of Mosquito Girl. But in his mind, a picture suddenly emerged. The Mosquito Girl tied up a man and kept asking the man to call her queen. What a sin! Kyle muttered. But in his heart, he unconsciously thought of the chief jailer named Little Sarah in Impel Down. Do I really have to find a queen who loves SM to match Mosquito Girl? Kyle asked himself helplessly. But soon, he gave up thinking. After all, even if Little Sarah could successfully match Mosquito Girl, he had no way to dig her over in a short period of time. His eyes turned. Kyle looked at the remaining C-rank items again. Among them, 3 are large experience books that can increase experience points, so I won't mention them here. It is estimated that this type of props may appear frequently in future draws. As for the other 2 C-rank items, one is called Capsule Motorcycle. This is a vehicle from the Dragon Ball world and has no special powers of its own. The only difference between it and a normal motorcycle is, when you don't plan to use it, you can shrink it into a capsule-sized thing for easy carrying. Because it involves some spatial power, this capsule motorcycle was rated C by the system. It's actually a good quality land motorcycle. The other C-rank item is a special weapon from the same world as the Imperial weapon, the romantic turret. Subject's weapon Rattlesnake. This is a long whip weapon that can change freely according to the user's wishes. Because its function is too simple and it has no other outstanding features, it is only rated C. But Mosquito Girl? Whip? System, did you do this on purpose or by accident? Kyle felt that the system had other intentions, so he immediately asked the system a soul-searching question. But this question is destined to remain unanswered. And at this point, the harvest of all the high-quality Gasopon machines has come to an end. After sorting all the props into categories, Kyle's eyes suddenly focused on the legendary Gasopon machine that was once out of his reach. Finally, we've come this far. It's a pity that I'm not qualified to draw 10 times in a row from the legendary Gasopon machine right now. But I believe that day will not be too far away. After encouraging himself in his heart, Kyle's eyes lit up and he started the legendary gacha he was most looking forward to. Hua la la la. The golden light suddenly flashed. The first grand prize of the legendary Gasopon machine directly gave Kyle an S-level prize. It can be said that it hits the target with one shot. Congratulations on obtaining the S-level character card, Gold Saint Shura. Saint Seiya. Looking at the golden light entering the backpack, Kyle's eyes suddenly lit up. Although Saint Seiya is a popular anime that even he has not caught up with, as the anime enlightenment for most people, Kyle is certainly not unfamiliar with this name. Even if he has not watched the anime, he knows the popular memes of that era such as Pegasus Meteor Fist, Lushan Rising Dragon Tyrant, and Protecting Athena. Although the gold saint that he obtained was not the familiar Shochung protagonist group, the fact that he could wear the gold armor was enough to show the strength of this young man named Shura. As expected of you, System Dad. Faced with such a generous system, Kyle didn't care about his face at all and shouted excitedly. With longing for the system, Kyle pressed the Gasopon button again. The machine shook again.
But this time, what appeared in front of Kyle was just a B-level prop with purple light.
Shogo system, can you do it? Kyle's expression changed instantly, and he questioned the system's capabilities.
After a while, his second shot failed to hit the target he expected, so he decided to go all out and invested his last 3 million Baileys into the legendary capsule machine. The next second, 3 information bars appeared in Kyle's sight at the same time. Congratulations on obtaining the A-rank character card, Tyrannosaurus. Congratulations on obtaining the B-level item, the beheading sword. Congratulations on obtaining the A-level character card, Namikaze Minato.
2 character cards, system, you really are my good father. System. I may not be a human, but you are a real dog.
As several streams of light penetrated into the backpack, Kyle immediately and excitedly opened the backpack interface and pulled it to the bottom.
All of a sudden,
the 5 items starting from the S-level character card are placed at the end of the team.
Legend Gashapon 5 consecutive draws. 1 S-level character card, 2 A-level character cards, 1 B-level weapon, and 1 B-level equipment.
One is a beheading sword that can be paired with Momochi Zabuza, and the other is a B-level equipment, Quing Shin, from the Ghoul World.
This is different from the previous Quinqua black box, which could change its form freely according to the host. Quink Xin is an armor-type defensive equipment that does not occupy the weapon slot, but at the same time it does not increase the qualifications of the partner.
Suitable for some aggressive melee partners. At this point, Kyle's capsule toy lottery has come to an end.
Chapter 56 Space Movement.
11 billion berries brought Kyle 7 character cards, greatly increasing his partner reserves. What is needed now is to find suitable matches for these character cards, and then completely transform them into tools to provide themselves with combat power bonuses.
But before that, he had another thing to do.
Just now, with the help of 11 billion berries, Kyle's captain experience was greatly increased again.
Today, he has successfully become a 4th level captain. Captain, Kyle. Level 4.
Experience value, for 30/2000.
Total combat power, 26,925.
Skills, Super Intuition, A, Special Kill, Serious Punch, S, Tsukuyami, A, Waiting to be drawn.
As expected, everything is difficult at the beginning.
It feels like the pace of upgrades has been getting faster and faster recently. With a combat power of 8,000, based on this physical fitness alone, he should be able to compete with some pirates around million. Looking at the words waiting for extraction on the interface, Kyle chuckled. No one will complain about the slow pace of their growth. What's more, after reaching level 4, he can already obtain % of the total combat power of his partners. The gap between him and Dashigi, the strongest fighter in the Dusk Pirates, is also narrowing. It won't be long before he finds compatible partners for all these character cards, and then he can legitimately become the strongest force in the pirate group. Fortunately, Dashigi is not a violent person, and she managed to fool him by laughing off her previous invitations to combat training. As a captain, he couldn't even beat his own men.
If this got out, wouldn't people be laughing at him? Come on. Let me see which lucky person will be the inheritor of my 4th skill. System Daddy. Gaia.
The familiar lottery disc appeared again, and Kyle waited silently.
After a few minutes, the disc gradually stopped.
And in front of Kyle, a flat-chested little girl with brown twin ponytails suddenly appeared. The little loli was wearing a short JK skirt, her small feet were wrapped tightly in thick white socks, and she was stepping on a pair of brown round-toed leather shoes, but she had a perverted smile on her face. After seeing the portrait in front of him, Kyle immediately gave a 4-word evaluation in his heart.
It's so tasteless.
Kyle smacked his lips, and with his not-so-rich knowledge of the second dimension, he recognized the identity of the little loli in front of him. Shirai Kuriko is the discipline committee member of Tokiwadai Middle School and also a level 4 space-type psychic. As the portrait of Shirai Kuriko appeared, a new message popped up in Kyle's mind. Congratulations on obtaining the B-level skill, Space Movement. The figure of Shirai Kuriko smiled foolishly. The next second, she suddenly turned into a stream of light and entered Kyle's body. At the same time, Kyle also instantly understood how to use the new skills.
Skill, Space Movement.
Grade, B. Introduction, consume mental power, and you can send objects and creatures that your skin touches to other spaces in an instant, ignoring the rules of three-dimensional space. The size, mass, and distance of the objects that are moved instantly depend on the mental power consumed. B-level, space-related skills? Kyle frowned slightly at first, but soon relaxed and showed an interested expression. Page 60. Although I didn't have the same good luck as before and didn't get to draw S and A-level skills this time, this space-based move doesn't necessarily seem to be weaker than the A-level skills. The space system is a rare and powerful ability no matter in which world. I just don't know how effective this space movement is in practice. Kyle raised his head and looked forward. After being upgraded to level 2, the captain's room is no longer that shabby little room. Not only has the floor space been increased to twice its previous size, but there is also a new independent bathroom, so he no longer has to sneak into Kobe's dormitory to use the bathroom.
More importantly, he now has a huge spring bed, which can accommodate 4 girls at the same time, and they can sleep on the same bed and enjoy the pleasure of having, together. The question now is, I have the bed, but where can I get the girl? With a thought, Kyle, who was originally near the office, suddenly appeared beside the bed. Kyle frowned slightly and felt a brief moment of emptiness, but soon returned to normal. Well, the consumption is not too much, he murmured softly. The distance from the bed to the desk is about 5 meters, and the energy consumed is probably only a few tenths of Kyle's total energy. This distance is more than enough to give the enemy a surprise. Even taking into account the fact that his mental strength cannot be reduced too low, he can still use this level of teleportation at least 20 to 30 times in a battle. And this data will continue to increase as he grows. Not bad. I'm very satisfied. After roughly calculating the value of this skill, Kyle's mouth curled up slightly. Next, let's test long-distance teleportation, Kyle thought to himself. The next moment, he moved his mind and his figure instantly disappeared in the captain's room. At the bow, a figure with weak legs and feet suddenly appeared. Kyle staggered and quickly grabbed the railing next to him. Who? Feeling the sudden emptiness, he took a deep breath. After a while, Kyle, who had adapted to the mental consumption, slowly stood up. He gasped and looked towards the captain's cabin. Is this the limitation of B-level skills? Just in a moment, he should have moved about 100 meters at a time, but more than half of his mental power was consumed in an instant. Kyle shook his head and regained some consciousness. Obviously, this skill is not currently suitable for long-distance space movement. I just don't know if he will be able to improve after his strength improves. At this moment, the figure of little Tiga suddenly appeared beside Kyle. After noticing his abnormality, little Tiga immediately asked worriedly, Captain, what's wrong with you? It's little Tiga. Kyle waved his hand and said, I'm fine, I just tried out a new skill. As he spoke, his eyes flashed and he looked at little Tiga, who could use instant teleportation infinitely on the Tiga. Without comparison, there is no harm. Compared with little Tiga's teleportation, this skill of his is really not that impressive. However, even though the long-distance movement effective space movement was not ideal, Kyle was not disappointed at all. After all, he also has an A-level skill called Super Intuition. With this perception skill that is even more powerful than the full-level observation haki, coupled with the ability to teleport in space. As long as the enemy's strength is not much greater than his, he can almost complete any battle without any injury. After rubbing his temple, Kyle stopped thinking about the new skill. He turned to look at little Tiga and asked, By the way, Tiga, how is the guy who was just thrown into the crew dormitory now? What? Looking at Kyle's current condition, the worry in little Tiga's eyes did not ease much. But he still responded to Kyle's question immediately. Actually, Captain Kyle. Little Tiga paused for a moment, then continued. I came to you just to tell you that the green-haired guy. Already awake. Chapter 57 Burn. My little universe. Oh. Kyle looked a little surprised. He woke up so soon? As expected of a man called a demon beast.
Being able to withstand Dashigi's full-strength attack with such weak strength, even with the help of the crew dormitory, this recovery ability is enough to be amazing. Just based on this recovery ability, it has surpassed most of the strong ones. After a sigh in his heart, Kyle immediately stood up, showed little Tiga that there was indeed nothing wrong with him, and then walked towards the crew dormitory.
At the same time,
in the crew quarters, on a previously empty bed,
Zoro opened his eyes slightly, looked at the spotless white wall in front of him, and instantly showed a look of confusion. Unfamiliar ceiling. Where am I?
He wondered, but the next second, a piercing pain suddenly spread into his heart.
Forehead. Zoro suddenly put his hand over his abdomen and looked down.
I suddenly realized that my body was wrapped in a large circle of thick gauze. There was a large blood stain on the gauze.
It hurts. Zoro frowned.
Based on his years of experience, he now has at least 3 broken ribs.
He won't be able to stand up again in the short term. Suddenly, a fragment of memory flooded into Zoro's mind, which was exactly the scene he experienced before he fell into a coma.
It was a fierce blow that shone with endless brilliant light, as if splitting the entire world into 2. And that was also the strongest blow he had ever seen in his life.
I was defeated? Zoro looked at his hands in disbelief. The black bloodstains were clearly engraved on his palm.
Since I had no more rivals at Shimotsuki Gym and had gone out to sea, this was the first time I had experienced the feeling of defeat.
Moreover, he was defeated completely by a single blow from someone else. Where do those guys come from? Zoro asked in confusion. Just like a beggar on the street cannot understand the life of an emperor. At this time, Zoro, who was still just hanging around in the East China Sea, could not understand the true power of the world at all. However, at this moment, a strange yet familiar voice suddenly appeared in his ears.
Hey, you're awake.
Zoro quickly turned his head and immediately saw Kyle, who suddenly appeared beside him. It's you?
Zoro looked surprised. Kyle, who teleported in from the door and secretly pretended to be a little tough, smiled and stretched out his hand, and greeted Zoro.
Yes, it's me. How is it? The feeling of being defeated shouldn't be that pleasant, right?
Without waiting for Zoro to speak, Kyle suddenly asked teasingly.
Zoro was silent for a moment, frowning slightly. Are you here to laugh at me? Ha ha, of course not.
I don't have such a bad taste. Kyle said with a smile on his face that never stopped.
Take it easy, you're laughing out loud.
Zoro struggled, ignoring the wounds on his body, and sat up. He immediately raised his head and his eyes met Kyle's directly.
Who are you? Us? Kyle smiled and shook his head. Sorry, I can't tell you the answer to this question right now. It's so mysterious. Zoro grumbled in dissatisfaction and then continued to ask. Then let me change the question. You recognized my identity and kept me here on purpose. You probably didn't just want to show off your powerful subordinates, did you?
What is your purpose?
Oh.
Kyle was slightly surprised.
As expected of you.
You can actually see my purpose at a glance.
You are different from an ordinary idiot. Zoro. Why do you feel insulted? But then, Kyle's voice continued to be heard. Yes, I do have a purpose.
As he spoke, Kyle suddenly put away the smile on his face and said seriously.
Come join my pirate group. Roronoa Zoro. The East China Sea is too small to accommodate a beast like you. Come with me, to a wider world, and make a big fuss. Alright legends, that's it for today. Like, subscribe, and I'll meet you in the next audiobook.